Under the open sky stretches a spacious, quiet landscape. This is how a journey into the wild begins. The sight of a favored insect suddenly triggers a vivid memory of a hunting stream from the past. He looks into the distance and recalls how just 6 months ago his life changed beyond recognition. The memory suddenly transports him to a younger version of himself. His henpecked partner tugs at him, scolding, as if he had sprawled out while they were in the field. He remembers how their group pushed forward and realizes, when insects swarm, there is no choice only to keep going. Surus looks at the screen with a smile and notes that their parallel broadcast has already surpassed 5,000. Chaos swarms, a poisonous amoeba appears and panic breaks out, but he remains calm, insisting there is no need to flee. He is already ready to engage in a fight with the creature, understanding that filming these crazy hunting moments is what defines the stream. He turns off the broadcast, throws a confident smile at the camera, and calls on viewers to follow the next episode. In a moment, he arrives at the meeting where the low number of viewers and weak returns from his recent investments are further limited by how everything will turn out. His companions criticize the performance, nitpicking the reaction to the gelatinous monster, saying it was too wooden, and insist that the creature should have been made bigger to better excite the crowd. The group acknowledges his relentless passion for innovation and notes that the guild leader always comes up with a new scheme to keep their streams relevant. Speaking about the industry, he notes, thanks to streaming technologies, everyone has gained access over the last 50 years, so competition has become fierce. Maniacal excitement grips him when he declares, to make Blazing Serpent the best guild in the world, they must hold increasingly bright and sensational competitions. As soon as the time passes, he launches an emergency stream conversation with a grim face and, sharply announcing that he is being expelled from the guild, confuses his subordinate Gasha. With a sharp snap of his fingers, he cuts off Gosha's surprise and coldly hints, let them listen to what the viewers say about the fire. He starts the broadcast with a stunning accusation. He claims that the man in front of him is stealing guild funds. On the broadcast screen, footage from the office and voices analyze the blurry video and conclude that the guilty one is definitely the one holding the great sword. Public sentiment instantly turns fiercely hostile. Viewers flood the chat with demands to immediately fire him and accusations of criminal behavior. From his desk, he watches the chaos unfold, and his face remains unreadable as a digital hailstorm of insults grows upon him. A woman steps forward, tearfully recounting unwanted harassment, and this makes him scream in despair, denying everything. The situation escalates to a fight as soon as he tries to break free, but he is also condemned for raising his hand against a comrade. He stands firm and, strictly raising a finger, formally orders the man to leave the guild. As soon as the broadcast ends, he drops the roll and casually asks his companion how well his tearful performance went. He leaned back in his chair and, satisfied with the quality of the filming, praised the technical team for their coordinated work on costumes and editing. The guild leader roughly pushed away the unexpected intrusion of the man who demanded explanations and spoke coldly and contemptuously. He mocked the man's misfortune, hinting that his departure would have no significance for the guild's success. The man flinched in shock as he was told to drop the facade. His confusion grew because every attempt backfired against him. He looked down at his own hands and shuddered as he realized the betrayal. He had worked so hard only because they promised to teach him the streaming techniques he needed. With a sharp, cruel move, he was knocked off his feet and hit with a cutting phrase. From the start, he had been nothing but a burden of guilt. Lying on the ground, he received the final, stinging insult about his pathetic contributions. He triumphantly loomed over the fallen man, reveling in the fact that their brutal performance brought the guild record views. He stands amid the ruins of his former life, not averting his gaze from the digital scoreboard. There are 8,000 viewers. Coldly and resolutely, he vows to exceed the threshold of 10,000 viewers, rejecting the pain of recent public humiliation and choosing a new path as a streamer. In a moment, he appears on the screen, a bright, practical smile, waving to his viewers as he introduces a new project, Old Man's Farm Guard. He proudly shows a bright tomato and tells how he grew it using special fertilizer from the nearest cave. While he speaks, notifications quietly chime. A viewer named Nyatikin-san joins the stream and warmly, sincerely greets and thanks him. The atmosphere sharply changes as a harsh comment appears in the chat. It mocks his agricultural efforts, calls everything boring, and asks what use the old man working in the field is. His hesitation for a moment, confidence collapses under criticism, but he quickly bursts out laughing, admitting, creating interesting content is much harder than it seems. Suddenly, through all this envy, a supportive message for Nyatikin breaks through. he says that the peaceful nature of his dreams gives a long-awaited feeling of relaxation. It is clearly visible how his shoulders relax and his face seems to brighten. He sincerely thanks the viewer, noticeably moved by the unexpected kindness. A system notification cuts in for a moment, but he barely notices it, immersed in the thought that there are still good souls in the world, far from the toxicity of his former guilt. Carefully, he watches the interface, noting a warning about the risk of accidentally revealing private information, but brushes it off as a low-level streamer problem. Taking a deep breath, he restarts the stream. A sharp burst of dust and debris signals the appearance of an unexpected threat. He freezes in disbelief as a familiar huge red lizard emerges from the haze. Its presence fills the entire landscape. On the other side of the digital divide, viewers watching the stream react with instant alarm. They recognize the creature at first glance. The beast is identified as a fire dragon, a newly classified Class A monster that poses a deadly threat to anyone who stands in its way. Panic waves through the chat. Observers warn that such a threat requires a specialized hunting team and pressure him to flee immediately. He is still fixated on his garden and shouts incessantly at the dragon to stay away from his tomatoes, until the absurdity of his priorities provokes frantic pleas from people to finally seek shelter. The dragon rushes forward with terrifying speed. He freezes, barely dodging the first strike. He barely avoids a deadly blow, and the digital audience erupts in disbelief, questioning whether this show is staged live. The traveler freezes, stunned by the sudden, vague demand from the viewers. Who is that elderly man? A mysterious observer watches the stream, and her face gradually softens. Genuine admiration for his unexpected skill appears in her. Despite the mortal danger, he scolds the destruction of his precious cornfield. His rage boils as the beast continues the rampage. He vows to show no mercy to those who threaten his garden and draws his blade while the viewers cheer for him with renewed excitement. Morning continues to draw fresh eyes. The viewer count grows. The strange performance spreads by rumor. As the erupting dragon looms over the stage, the viewers hang in complete confusion, trying to reconcile the risky fight with the agricultural theme of his stream. The traveler recounts a terrifying encounter with a fire dragon. The most frightening thing was the speed of the mysterious warrior who defeated the beast with a single strike. He still cannot comprehend what that power was and who the one wielding it truly is. He exhales a long, exhausted breath. The tension of the day finally begins to release as he finds a moment of silence. The camera shifts focus to the remains of the defeated creature, evidence of the extraordinary skill that was displayed earlier. Suddenly, he is struck by the realization the recording device had been working all along, broadcasting every step to the viewers. He freezes in confusion because his indifference made the viewers feel abandoned and disappointed. With an embarrassed expression, he apologizes to the invisible audience, admitting that he has reached his limit for today and decides to stop the broadcast. Somewhere far away, a young woman watches the buzz spreading around the event and notices how lively the conversations have become. She quietly smiles to herself, pleased that the first stage of their plan has been completed and already anticipates the next steps. She stood before the wall of notes, her gaze fixed on the increasingly loud digital noise announcing the birth of a new legend. The adventurer froze before the screen in disbelief. His eyes widened as the viewer counter jumped and surpassed 17,000. He tried to greet his audience, but his voice was immediately drowned out by the chaotic stream of messages from newcomers and curious viewers. Trying to regain control again, he announced a boring lesson on how to chop wood, but in response came an impatient demand: give more spectacle. Ignoring the dissent, he swung his massive weapon with sharpened precision. With a single thunderous strike, he split the log. 2 days later, the quiet town of Mosrif turned into a noisy center of events. Roy approached him with a box of harvest and said that the whole town was already buzzing with rumors about his fresh exploits. He shuddered in shock as the crowd surged at him and shoved articles about his sudden fame right in his face. Suddenly, he finds himself among townspeople who wildly raise joyful noise because his recent exploits instantly brought him to the forefront of world fame. In the whirl of the hustle, Gash approaches him with a gloomy request, recalling a terrifying encounter near the place where a fiery dragon once broke free. The man says he saw treacherous eyes watching from the depths of that pit, and in a moment, everyone immediately agrees to go and check if any danger remains there. They coordinate their plans, deciding to conduct the investigation during the day while simultaneously protecting the city's vegetable harvest from any secret threat. While the townspeople gossip about him due to his need for a wife, a mysterious woman in a cloak arrives and asks where Gash is. She reveals herself as a fierce supporter and says she has urgent information and must deliver it to him personally. Fan, excitedly pointing at him, calls others, gathering a crowd to chase after him as he walks away, noticing nothing, and the crowd's pressure only grows. Watching from the side, a local resident sincerely wishes Gash to finally find love. He stands before the dark, gaping mouth of a cave, holding a lantern in his hand and forcing himself to enter. Behind his back, the mysterious woman still lingers in the shadows, anxiety tearing her thoughts apart about how to approach him. She shakes off doubt and reminds herself, now is not the time for cowardice. As he crawls deeper into the narrow tunnel, he stops and notices a strange, sticky substance coating the stone walls. The tunnel suddenly opens into a huge, spacious cave, and he squats down to examine the scale of this place. He estimates the path forward and realizes the tunnel system is much wider than he initially imagined. He does not pay attention to what is around. He continues moving forward while the woman watches him from the darkness near the tunnel entrance. Suddenly, a drop of slime from the cave falls on her clothes, and she complains that he missed the chance to see the unique features of this cave. She watches from the darkness as a grotesque reptilian creature descends from the cave ceiling. This is jaws agape, and it is ready to pounce. The beast lunged down, but he reacted like lightning at the last moment, dodging the predator's deadly descent. When the creature lands, she suddenly rushes forward to check on him and calls his name with a voice full of urgent anxiety. He sharply pulls her to safety, his eyes wide with embarrassment as he demands an explanation of how some stranger could have recognized him at all. The animal recovers and spits out a glob of sticky slime, causing him to urge her to flee while he prepares to chase the beast. She refuses to leave him, declaring that she has finally found her idol and intends to stay even as the creature prepares for another strike. With one quick, decisive blow, she finishes off the monster and he freezes, confused and gasping, trying to understand how everything changed so suddenly. Hona floods her in the darkness of the cave. She firmly states that she cannot leave him behind, and at this phrase, he freezes speechless for a moment. She observed Udormaru and noticed their thick hides made ordinary strikes useless against these generally peaceful creatures. Turning to Gashu, she insisted he needed a real blade to overcome the threat. He froze in amazement when she, without wasting time, volunteered to get the weapon and promised to cover him with all her might while he waited. The cave exploded into chaos as they twisted away at the last moment from the lunge, a maw full of teeth lunging at them. When he suggested using communication magic to call for help, she firmly rejected the idea and instead chose to reveal a shining magical artifact. She ordered him to activate the object, insisting that it would light their way forward. A heavy, formidable sword lay waiting on the cave floor, its presence sharply contrasting with the surrounding darkness. When the monster lunged forward again, she released a series of flickering magical barriers and shouted his name to keep him focused on the task. She holds a magical grip, allowing the traveler to deliver the final decisive blow to Yade Meru. He stands amid the aftermath, and as the tension of the battle begins to subside, his blade is already sheathed. Turning to his companion, he expresses gratitude and acknowledges her intervention was the key to his survival. She points toward the dark tunnel, warning that the path likely serves as a transit route for even greater creatures, and it must be sealed immediately to protect the city. Together, they collapse the entrance, sealing the threat and ensure the safety of the nearest settlement. He modestly declines her praise, feeling a pang of guilt for the injuries she sustained while helping him. Tracing a mark on his body with his finger, he thoughtfully recalls his past as a mercenary and admits that he was once much weaker than he is now. He looks at her with new respect and confesses that he has long considered her the one he admires most before finally introducing himself. She revealed her true identity, Misery Aronia, and hinted that the name Nyakin might trigger a memory in her companion. He confirmed the connection, stunned that the person he knew as a streamer was standing right in front of him, and immediately asked how she found him. She explained that her discovery was the result of thorough research. She analyzed his previous broadcasts many times to calculate where he was located. Suddenly bursting with enthusiasm, she urged him to join in creating a new streaming guild in the very capital, and he froze in surprise at the unexpected proposal. The young woman watches him intently, and a revelation spins in her mind. The humble farmer is actually a legendary figure with incredible power. He stands in shock, trying to understand why the mysterious and beautiful girl came to him. As she gestures, a sudden downpour begins, and she immediately suggests finding shelter. He offers to continue the conversation at his home, and the feeling is obvious. Their astonishment and excitement are off the charts. The rain rages and lashes against the wooden walls of his lonely cabin as they arrive. She steps over the threshold. He offers her a place to leave her things and goes to get a towel to dry off. She is left alone for a moment and her heart pounds wildly when she finally realizes she is already in his house. Hearing a sudden impulse, she reached into her bag, anxiously checking that the important documents inside remained dry. He returns just as she is busy and hands her a towel politely, helpfully, in a way that confuses her. She freezes in the room, hands outstretched and her gaze fixed in a gesture of sudden stunned enlightenment as the door opens. Just a moment ago the air became heavy with awkwardness. He asked if she had brought a change of clothes and she embarrassedly admitted she had not. He advised her to borrow some from the women in the village to avoid catching a cold, but his suggestion was suddenly met with a loud, thunderous objection. She insisted that she trains regularly and everything would be fine. Now he stands by the table, his face flushed with shame, and tries with all his might to look away from the basket of laundry. His own nerves are twisting him. He turns sharply, accidentally bumps into her, and decides lighting a fire is the only way to break this tension. His gaze falls on a strange document left behind. On the cover, a list of reasons why they decided to scrutinize him closely. He begins reading page after page, coming across detailed notes about his character, his secret martial arts, and even future plans regarding streams. The last note catches his eye. It praises his dreams for being completely safe for everyone. He freezes in shock and cannot believe how she stands before him wearing only an oversized shirt and having taken off the pants he gave her because they didn't fit. Embarrassed, he feverishly insists that she at least wrap herself in the towel. He seeks clarity and questions the nature of the documents she left behind. She explains she has long wanted to go live on stream with him and she had been writing about it for years, even before witnessing his ban from the broadcast. Only when there was a knock at the door did the conversation break off. The visitor with sharp features cuts off the thought of joining the fan club with a categorical no, sharply and unequivocally dispelling the tension. As soon as he realizes that the guest came specifically to talk to him, he abruptly leaves, leaving the others in the room. Among those who remained, confusion flares up as soon as they realize he is gone. The guest, clearly shattered by the lost chance, collapses in despair and whines that they were late, they failed to catch up with him. In desperation to save the situation, the visitor reaches out and begs to join their guild, promising success as a top performer, but he does not move. He gives a final cold farewell and leaves. A sharper cut whistles in the air. She declares cold-bloodedly and unwaveringly that she will not work under someone she considers a joke. Her companion, teeth chattering with indignation, catches up with her and reproaches her, asks why she was so rude and irritable, although he had been listening silently until this moment. He watched as the woman exploded with rage. She declared that she would never forgive the insult inflicted on Gash, and her eyes blazed with indignation. She stood her ground, her face twitching with irritation as she rejected the accusations, and her hand was bleeding, but she still held on stubbornly. Her partner quickly intervened, scolding her for showing their strength so recklessly, then turned around and offered a compromise, information about Gosha's contact in exchange for his recruitment. Without any hesitation, she simply turned her back, suddenly smiled emptily, and declared that she would find the strength within herself, then left so abruptly that the others froze in shock. She continued to walk away calmly, quietly noting that later they themselves would understand how many talents they had driven away with their actions. In the quiet room, she struck the table with her fist in despair and lamented that Gashu's true abilities and charms still remain hidden from the public. She approached Gashu holding the document in plain sight and insisted that she intended to explain everything while he stood aside, stunned by her sudden and overly intense interest. Leaning in unbearably close, she declared that she wanted to make him the best streamer in the world, and under her pressure, he became confused and recoiled, stepping back. He finds himself in an awkward situation when the woman stumbles and falls right onto him. Her face reddens with embarrassment as she apologizes incessantly and offers to move to the capital. The sudden closeness makes him shudder in shock, and his voice rises in a frightened exclamation as he processes the unexpected physical contact. When the tension reaches its limit, Roy enters the room, escaping a sudden downpour, and immediately comes upon the two in a compromising position, causing him to doubt what kind of meeting this is. He tries to regain composure, acknowledging that he understands the situation, and asks the woman to clarify her true intentions. Standing on the porch, Roy urges him to follow his own desires, noting how fieldwork is becoming increasingly demanding and how the threat of monsters in the village is growing. His gaze drifts into the distance as he contemplates his own aspirations, finally ready to say what he truly wants. In a moment, he asks Roy to escort the woman to the hotel, watching as she proudly shows off her now dry clothes. Before leaving, he asks to borrow the documents for the night. He needs time to consider the proposal that has turned his life upside down, standing before him. He stood in the open field and looked back into the past. He remembered the chaos that erupted on the day he first went as a mercenary and feared that if he left the village again, he would only bring sorrow to those he left behind. Next to him, comrades acknowledged how noticeably his presence weighed, saw how much the peasants valued him, and at the same time secretly hoped that he would seize the new opportunity presented to him. The conversation turned to that mysterious woman. One of the companions asked why she suddenly appeared, and in response, he was reminded now the choice depends entirely on him. His face tensed sharply suddenly. At that moment, he had a realization as he looked at her, and the meaning of her words finally hit the mark. She shone with gratitude, thanked him for the conversation, and immediately offered a festive banquet in honor of the event. So for a moment, he was lulled by confusion due to the sudden change of plans. The village exploded with noise. Locals brought out meat from a fresh dragon hunt and greeted the travelers sit down to eat and drink together in the spirit of shared merriment. During the celebrations, he returned to his companion and offered to explain what was happening now before they set out. The settlement lay calm and spread out under the mountains, unaware that decisions capable of turning life upside down were already ripening within its bounds. He meets the morning with a heavy heart, watching a peasant enthusiastically waving from the porch of a nearby hut. She approaches him with a radiant, hopeful smile, hands clasped in a lock, and she asks if he has finally made a decision. He confirms that he has reviewed all the necessary documents and thanks for the provided information. With a sincere expression, he acknowledges the depth of her passion and unwavering determination that she demonstrated. Her eyes flash with joy, but she is already trying to intervene, hesitating at the word, but as soon as the conversation shifts. He breaks off those words halfway, and his jaw tightens when he declares that he cannot force himself to leave the village. The sudden appearance of a massive winged predator instantly quiets the air. Its presence casts a shadow over their conversation. He acknowledges the beast as a dangerous creature classified by order of the capital. He draws his weapon and orders it to step back, promising to finish their conversation once the threat is neutralized. He watches the digital feed with growing anxiety, noting the frequency of the terrifying wyvern's appearances. While the audience scrolls through comments, more and more questions arise. Why are these creatures so small and appearing so often, and why does this pattern break the usual expectations of such dangerous beasts? Her eyes widen sharply as she stares at the screen, the reality of what happened sinking in. The encounter with Edemaru just the day before yesterday had already shaken her calm, but this relentless wave of monsters in the village makes her doubt. Is their home safe at all? The stream continues and the chat explodes with panic. A powerful, deadly creature unfolds on the screen, filling everything. Viewers tremble aloud with fear, confirming that the rural area has become hunting grounds for dangerous species, and the village is already locked in a nightmarish nightmare that is only intensifying. The wyvern descends with a strike that makes the ground thunder. Its gigantic body shakes the earth, and a voice explains, "The sharp claws of this creature mean one must stay far away from its reach at all costs." He scrutinizes the beast, noticing it has no long-range attacks and its movements are too predictable, but a skeptical voice immediately dismisses the idea that this will be such an easy fight. Suddenly, a group of villagers jumps forward shouting that they intend to deal with the threat, and the crowd of spectators is stunned by their unexpected intervention. They declare that the goal is to demonstrate the lessons learned over the past 6 months, and from the crowd echoes a mysterious, sweet voice doubting where their new skill came from. When the wyvern lunges forward, he warns them to be careful, but hearing their persistence, he decides to hold back and observe their capabilities. With smooth grace, the villagers effortlessly dodge the wyvern's strikes, and the expression on its face freezes in complete shock, how quickly they have grown in skill. The fight becomes even fiercer when they respond with a strike. They throw themselves into battle with unconventional tactics and press with brute force to hit the creature hard and make it stagger from the unexpected attack. They continue the coordinated assault, cornering the wyvern, and Zevakum can only guess who these peasants really are. He clenches his fist, and a smile spreads across his face as he watches the display of true power before him. The massive wyvern is tamed at last. It is surrounded by peasants who have taken full control of the clash. With a sharp strike, he drives the blade into the creature's neck armor and shouts that tonight they will feast on grilled wyvern. He celebrates the victory with a loud laugh, and his companion looks at him with wide-open eyes, utterly amazed. As the dust settles, passers-by freeze in amazement, quietly whispering about the possibility of becoming his disciples and wondering what this mysterious village really is. Breathless from tension, he nods. The fight turned out easier than he expected, and his companions marvel at the incredible skill of the villagers. He reflects on his past decisions and realizes his earlier refusal of the invitation was just a cowardly excuse to avoid the trial he fears. Standing before the assembly, he raises his gaze to everyone and commands attention, ready to speak the truth about the new resolve he has found. He declares his intention to head to the royal capital, his voice firm, filled with a new determined spirit. Looking at him, she can only whisper his name in quiet astonishment. The announcement sparks a wave of excitement among his audience. They flood the screen with messages of unconditional support for his upcoming journey. Lifted by a wave of sincere care, he accepts their wishes with a grateful nod, and thanks to this shared moment, their bond becomes stronger. A quiet locality spreads out before them, a silent witness to all the life he leaves behind as he prepares for the road ahead. He is suddenly jerked by surprise when she points out his broadcast is still on and transmitting every reaction to the world. Realizing what he missed, he turns to the device and says goodbye to the viewers properly, while they urge him to stay confident. He shares his ambitious plan to create a new streaming guild. His excitement is wordless as he thanks his supporters for continuing to believe in him. As soon as the last word is spoken, he turns back to her, and together they take a step forward into the unknown, ready to start a new chapter. A lonely cart travels down the road. Its passenger is pondering the nature of current requests. It becomes clear registration through the Guild Association opens the possibility to accept streaming requests, from rare ingredient searches to deep dungeon walks. He sits next to his companion and shows genuine interest in the opportunities that are opening up. She shifts the conversation to their planning and makes it clear they will move forward with 2 specific ideas. Returning to him, she confirms his status and asks if he has officially registered as an adventurer. Her eyes flash with excitement as she suggests directing their efforts towards streams of conquest and exploration. He agrees, noting that variety is necessary to avoid boredom, and she suggests even a story about vegetables can unexpectedly captivate. With a warm smile, he shifts the planning onto her, and it is clear that he is energized by the prospect of their future joint content. He stands amid the bustling energy of the royal capital and thoughtfully listens to the familiar, nostalgic atmosphere as a new journey begins. He watches the crowd. He notes how highly current streamers are rated and singles out one who now holds the top spot in viewer rankings. The conversation shifts to a giant food contest being broadcast live. The prize is 1 million gold, making it the most talked about event in the capital. He politely declines the invitation to join the celebrations, preferring first to find a place to drop off his luggage and rest after long travels. A feeling of pensiveness overtakes him as he recalls his isolation and wonders how the fates of his old comrades have unfolded over these 6 months. Suddenly, the scene takes us deep into an intermediate dungeon, where a group of travelers is fleeing in panic from a monster. Hannah highlights the corruption as the creature lunges forward and throws bodies into the attack, forcing the reserve squad to desperately try to defend against this invincible threat. Chaos is reflected in sharp digital feedback. Invisible critics mock the guild's failed attempts and its continuous personnel changes. He fixated on the screen, his face twisted into a mad, predatory grin as soon as he realized how the audience was drawn to failure. Rumors about Gosh's departure only fueled his obsession with the spectacle of the fight. Seized by sudden desperate determination, he rushed like a whirlwind through the darkness of the prison dungeon, his footsteps echoing in the corridors, shouting that he would abandon streams of submission to carve out a new, more profitable trend. For now, in the bustling vestibule of the Graham Guild Association, a friendly receptionist greeted the newcomers with a radiant smile and handed them the necessary documents to officially register their new guild. They sat down at the table and stared blankly at the registration form. The reality of their situation hit them as soon as they realized they had not yet decided on either a name for their guild or a base of operations. The receptionist remained indifferent to everything. Her friendly manner did not change when she asked them not to rush and to bring the completed form as soon as they were ready. While they were pondering this dreadful matter, a woman approached them. Her eyes narrowed with curiosity, and she timely interrupted their deliberations by asking if they were really who she thought they were. She burst into genuine admiration, clasped her palms together, confirming their identity, and it immediately became clear she was an ardent fan of her recent Gashu broadcasts. She explained that she had seen his viewership numbers soar to the skies, and her sudden outburst of emotion drew the attention of others, and realizing she had made a scene, she hurriedly apologized. She shines with uncontrollable delight, boasting about how many times she had rewatched his dream, and from the unexpected praise he noticeably becomes embarrassed and blushes. In her excitement, she insists that she is ready to provide all support, energetically shakes his hand and promises to help in any way she can. He admits that he has no base, so she asks if he has any specific places in mind for the new guild. She quickly slides a document across the counter, emphasizing that this is a property she highly recommends, and says that for his growing guild, it would be perfect. They both lean forward, and their eyes widen. They eagerly study the details of the proposed location. She promises to settle everything immediately, invites them to go outside and look at the estate right now. Meanwhile, the charismatic host addresses his audience, introducing himself. He is the voice of the lovely girl from Discovery Channel, and right now he is acquainting the captivated viewers with himself. He squints a sharp, calculated glint, and it becomes clear he has a special trick up his sleeve to keep the quality of his broadcast higher than ever. She continues the broadcast, then suddenly shifts her attention to the blonde next to her and calls her, playfully and boldly flirting. The digital audience reacts instantly. The chat explodes with praise for her bold approach to the beautiful stranger. Unnoticed by attention, she showers the girl with compliments, comparing her broadcast beauty to that of an angel or a fairy. The girl introduces herself as Missouri, and the streamer Weiss immediately dismisses formalities, clearly enchanted by the very sound of that name. With a wrist movement, Wise creates a small card, hoping to attract the girl's attention while not interrupting his own plan. Missouri freezes, staring at the object shown to her, momentarily stunned by the sharp gesture. The card is an invitation to a luxurious chartreuse restaurant, a famous establishment frequented by the renowned singer Melvis John, and this completely confuses Missouri. Weiss pressures him, insisting that refusing such an invitation from an elder is a grave offense to the gods, and effectively cornering her, forcing her to go for a day. Suddenly, he finds himself face to face with a strikingly bold newcomer who bursts into the conversation and accuses him of being an old man who worships Missouri, while the surrounding people whisper behind their backs due to the scandalous nature of this meeting. She reacts with anxiety, warning that the situation is becoming dangerous. While he remains calm, his face reveals nothing. He extends his hand and calmly assures her that he has everything under control. The rookie mocks his confidence, teases his fear while he stands his ground, and insists, let them resolve the conflict without violence just in such a public place. Ignoring the plea for peace, the opponent boasts about his B-class status from the capital and lunges forward sharply, but receives a quick, decisive counterstrike, after which he falls to the ground. The blow stuns the opponent. He writhes in agony. His face is bloodied, his bravado shattered, yet he still tries to maintain his audacity. Angry that he cannot land a single hit, the opponent looks frantically as the adversary moves with impeccable ease. His confusion grows while the spectators watch this completely one-sided performance. Finally, he snapped, silenced the opponent's protests, and demanded that he listen to common sense. Apparently, his patience had run out. He narrowed his eyes. The decision was made. There was no other way, so he had to act. With a sharp final movement, he closed the distance. His fist hit the opponent's armor, and everything vanished in unleashed, pure force. The blow of the dragon hammer echoed in the air, and the opponent fell to the ground, bewildered, knocked down, and defeated. When the dust settled, he crouched beside the fallen and pressed on him to breathe slowly, while asking if he had hit too hard. Nearby, a woman surveyed the scene and explained to those around, their association was only a professional streaming branch, not the romantic entanglement others had thought. She noted that the weapon was only a replica, so the opponent did not suffer any lasting harm. Observing the consequences, the man with a friendly face noted that the opponent was probably just protecting the silence in the city, hiding behind his broadcast, thus proving good intentions. But suddenly the fallen travelers shuddered and sprang to their feet, babbling apologies madly as soon as he realized he had dropped something, and panikedly rushed away from the spot. He watched as the challenger walked away, noticed the ticket left behind, and decided to simply give it back during their next meeting. When the tension subsided, they sat down to eat together and raised their mugs in a toast to new cooperation. During the snack, she said that tomorrow they needed to go shopping to set up a new living space. While he praised the quality of the real estate, he helped her close the deal with him. Suddenly he realized with a groan that they had completely missed the task to name their guild, a detail he hoped had already been finally decided. She began randomly throwing out grand, classical names like Flames, Serpent of the Scorching Sky, although it was clear he did not really believe in this showy pathos. Overwhelmed by the absurdity of the naming process, he collapsed onto the table, and she suggested focusing at least on the food. She smiled and suggested they not rush, argue, and invent together, and then later fit the words into a classic formula. They exchanged a look of mutual understanding, finally relaxing, and prepared to spend the rest of the evening as they wished. She sits next to her companion, sharing the excitement from their recent conversation about streaming, and both clearly savor the light, relaxed atmosphere over dinner. In a moment of vulnerability, she admits that she finds it hard to pick a name for their guild. She says she was simply inspired by watching him and felt both kindness and warmth in his presence. Her gaze softens as she whispers one image-filled word, son. He blushes from the sudden strength of her look, feels as if this comparison envelops him, yet still responds with sincere gratitude. Because of his reaction, she freezes and looks at him puzzled, forcing him to awkwardly admit how weighty her words are. She breaks the tension with a radiant smile and offers a new, fuller name, Golden Sun. When the decision was finally made, they turned to their companion and proposed a celebratory toast to mark the beginning of their bright future. The table is covered with Mugsa's silent proof of friendship, and a new shared chapter is about to begin, into which they will step together. He stood up, stating that he intended to pay and get himself a drink, although his comrade urged him to stay and continue the conversation. He returned to the table and apologized for the delay. His face flushed with a blush, gratitude and anxiety for his companion's well-being mingled in his eyes. She gave in to fatigue, her head fell heavily on the table, and as she drifted into a deep, peaceful sleep. Carrying her in his arms, he reached the inn, but he was met with a completely ominous message. For the whole night, everything there was already booked to the last spot. He defended his case, and after a brief hesitation, the innkeeper yielded, agreeing to make a special exception for his companion. Understanding struck him as soon as he laid her on the bed. There was only one bed in the room, so they found themselves in an unexpected trap. Isura stands over the sleeping girl, his heart pounding so hard it fills the room. His hand trembles as he weighs the closeness of the very moment. He leans over, the air around him changes as he approaches her resting body. And the traveler struggles with his conscience, hesitating whether he has lost all sense of caution, when suddenly he catches himself accepting her so fervently. In the silence of the room, he freezes, as if bound to the embrace of the moment, while thoughts rush, sinking under the weight of what is happening. He is pierced by cold sweat. He panics and whispers to himself to calm down, stunned by the realization that the old man found himself in such a situation with a young girl. The girl stirs, a soft smile barely flickers on her lips, and she quietly whispers a wave of comments, as if unaware of the tension in the room. He steps back to the edge of the bed, the floors creak under his weight, and he watches as she continues to sleep peacefully. When the morning light breaks through the shadows, the chirping of birds announces the start of a new day, and she slowly awakens from sleep. He silently watches from the shadows as the girl stirs, clutches her head, and groans about the same lingering effects of intoxication. She blinks, looks around confusedly, and calls Gasha, but sees that he is sitting nearby. His sudden presence takes her breath away, and realization flashes in her eyes. From his closeness, she suddenly jumps in bed. Her heart pounds wildly as he calmly greets her in the morning. Touched by shame to the edge, she dives into a deep bow and endlessly apologizes for all the troubles she herself caused. He tries to brush off her worries, but she demands with fierce persistence that he prioritize rest over the guild papers. Meanwhile, the streamer meets with the guild staff and asks what kind of stream is allowed to be conducted in this place. She presents an application for dungeon exploration and notes that she has a specific request regarding the location. The guild representative hesitates, warning, obtaining permission for such a venue for a newly formed guild will be extremely difficult, but the streamer is still determined to make a strong impression. She secured one last favor for herself. She asked him to convey a specific request to the guild president. Conversation turned to the outskirts of Graham, where the residents of Misery stood. She explained that the move was manageable because she lived only with her older sister, who often went away for work. He noted the similarity of their circumstances. Both live separately and share a passion for broadcasting. Their attention fell on a wall covered with notes and diagrams, and she proudly declared it their map to success. They shared a moment of optimism, imagining the possibility of reaching the peak of their mastery. He admitted that he wants to become stronger by following her streams, and struggling with a greatsword made her suggest training with a rapier instead. With a sense of renewed purpose, they stood in front of the building and declared it their new base of operations. She examines the new base, marvels at the spacious courtyard and the large dining hall, and notes how perfectly the built plan suits their agricultural plans. Stunned by the scale of their new headquarters, she, together with her companion, discusses the vast amount of space allocated to them and quickly shifts the conversation to how to arrange the equipment and settle into the private rooms. They turn their attention to Roy, and he takes responsibility for the administrative work, confirming that he understands the basic principles of managing the dormitory and office spaces over the next 3 days. He brings up recent news. He says that Masiri-san informed him about the arrival of an A-rank adventurer specifically to carry out tasks related to monster taming. While they were discussing the strange increase in the number of monsters, suddenly the gate creaked. It scared them and immediately forced them to focus on the unexpected interruption. She appears wrapped in a towel after a shower and excitedly announces that they have received official permission to explore the S-rank dungeon, and Roy noticeably blushes with embarrassment. He sharply turns away, embarrassed by her lack of clothing, while she panics and runs away headlong, and he remains stunned by the sudden intimacy of what happened. Soon they gather again at the table to discuss the strategic implications of the S-ranked dungeon permit, while she begins to lay out her plan for streaming with a large blind spot. She emphasizes that to survive, they need to create a project that will capture the public's imagination, since the world is now obsessed with streaming, and they need to stand out to secure the necessary funding. A loud figure laughed, admitting, while a bunch of guilds mindlessly stir up trouble to gain fame, this is not their forte. She agrees, insisting that their strategy is based on safe and pleasant content. Gashu acknowledges this with a thoughtful nod. When she asks if there is a deeper reason for his dedication to streaming, he confirms, it is indeed a matter of great importance. He shifts the conversation and asks if she is familiar with a streamer named Melvis. She immediately confirms that yes, she knows him. Gashu recalls his past, how once his comrades left him behind as soon as he joined the Adventurers Guild, and he suffered because no work came his way. Because he was ignored in monster taming quests. Later, he turned his back on that life and reoriented himself to the streaming guild. The conversation is ending when a traveler from the Blazing Serpent Guild approaches them and says he wants to unite for monster taming work. She continued to enchant him through the screen. Her appearance was like a beacon of light in the darkest days of his grief and exhausting, mundane work. Her voice sounded so that it cut through the silence in his room and firmly rooted his wandering thoughts. He froze and watched, enchanted, as she performed her act with ethereal grace that seemed to transcend digital media. Day by day, he found solace in her streams until he realized he himself yearned to reproduce the warmth she gave to others. Despite his first attempts to stream alone, which ended in failure, he was not going to retreat from his stubborn pursuit of that same connection. She acknowledged her passion to highlight the shine of others and said that meeting him became the impetus for her new calling, to bring that charm to the whole world. The next day, tension hung in the air. She teased him for his obvious anxiety and forced him to pull himself together before the broadcast began. With a confident click, she turned on the stream, inviting him to finally step into the spotlight together with her. She shines into the camera and introduces the viewer to herself and her partner, Gashu, officially opening their new streaming guild, Golden Sun. The chat explodes with activity. Thousands of viewers join the broadcast, and many write about their interest in new faces and recognize the traveler. Seeing the viewer counter rapidly rising, she sharply exhales in shock and exclaims, their debut is many times more successful than the usual start of a new channel. Keeping focus, she reveals a banner with their guild's slogan, while Gasha tries again to steer the conversation towards their planned acquaintance. With a refined gesture, she raises the flag but does not notice that she is holding it completely upside down. The audience immediately reacts to the mistake. Their misunderstanding floods the chat and the inverted text becomes the main focus. Seeing her mistake, she blushes with shame and quickly apologizes, while Gasha points out how to help her correct it. Finally, holding the flag correctly, Gasha confidently states that their mission is to bring smiles to everyone, aiming at the top of the streaming world. He watched as the rapid chat suddenly choked on viewers' hints, from requests for guides on the greatsword to bold challenges tackling ranked dungeons right away. Switching attention to the next broadcast, he admitted that the road ahead would not be easily, understanding that the path they chose would not be easy even a step. The next day they arrived at the main gates of Graham, where they were met by two guides, Oberyn and Sigurd. He expressed doubt about their decision to try an S-class dungeon for their very first stream. He brushed off the guide's criticism with a confident smile, making it clear that despite appearances they have adventure skills at the S rank and A rank level. Due to strict rules, he learned that high-ranking adventurers must personally oversee their entry, and to enter the dungeon, a special key is required. When the formalities were exhausted, he waved to the group forward, eagerly rushing into the depths. Soon they reached the radiant, mystical entrance to the S-rank dungeon blue crystal cave. He lifted the necessary key, and his facial expression sharpened as he prepared to open the way forward. He inserts the key, and with a blinding flash, the ancient seal guarding the dungeon entrance ceases to exist. The man gestures toward the dark, bottomless threshold, signaling the path is now open and they can proceed further. He listens silently while the guide coldly explains the conditions. If they perish, the support team will simply turn back, but whatever they leave behind will be taken if the squad manages to reach the deepest levels. Nearby, spectators whisper in disbelief, wondering how some C-rank adventurer even managed to get permission to explore this dangerous place. They watch with growing anxiety as two move forward, convinced that this reckless plan will inevitably lead them to death. However, one witness freezes in shock, staring at his broadcasting device, recalling rumors about how this very traveler single-handedly defeated 5 flame dragons. He catches the biased gaze of the witnesses, a barely noticeable confident smile plays on his lips as he prepares to show them exactly what he is capable of. Comrade beside him, he firmly steps into the very depths of the dungeon, ready to prove his worth to the world. The broadcast begins with the streamer greeting her audience, announcing that they have arrived at Blue Crystal Caves, and the viewer count rapidly jumps to nearly 20,000. When the pressure from the live broadcast increases, the adventurer notices how insanely large the number of simultaneous viewers is following their progress. Suddenly, a pack of wolves pours down on them. The streamer calls them dangerous Class A threats, far exceeding their initial definition. She encourages him with words while he prepares his blade, recalling past experience with similar beasts to calm his nerves. Their gazes meet in a moment of silent understanding, the full weight of the situation reflected in their focused facial expressions. He contemplates the surrealness of everything experienced and notes, seeing these events live is deeper than watching them through a screen. She urges him to trust his own strength and assures him his true power is enough to handle this threat. With a surge of determination, he holds his position against the approaching pack, ready to face the beginning of the 4 gods. He rushed forward and delivered a dazzling strike. The blade sliced through the air with a jerk, scattering the pack of wolves with one decisive move. When the dust settled, the streamer joyfully shouted in victory, amazed at the anonymous technique just shown, and she called it the ancient origin of the martial art 4 gods. To the onlookers there was silence, and they watched in awe, as such a feat should have been impossible for anyone outside the Beastman race. He scratched the back of his head and explained that he had simply stumbled upon an instructional video while looking for morning exercises. Since he followed the movements daily for his own health, he inadvertently mastered the technique. During the broadcast, the viewers exploded with shock. Many wrote that even their elders could not repeat such a trick and called him a genius. Meanwhile, the conversation shifted. They mocked him, hinted that he should be honest about his abilities and perhaps seek official guidance. The streamer again turned her gaze to the viewers, promised even more excitement ahead, and urged them to stay put until the next demonstration of skill. She suggests a short break, recalling how many monsters they have already defeated. He stops, assesses their progress, and confirms they have already passed 2/3 of the dungeon. Their attention is drawn to an unknown room 1 that is not on their map. Entering the chamber, they find a treasure chest, a usual thing for such hideouts. She says that if the find is broadcast live, it becomes an official report, so it can be taken out. Inside the chest, they find a jar with glowing creatures, and she recognizes them as fulguri. She explains that these are a type of fae capable of providing illumination, as the creatures emit a soft, magical glow. He smiles, and in that smile is complete confidence in her skill as they continue their journey. She watches as a small glowing fairy quietly floats away. On her face is an expression of calm wonder. She observes the party as it moves through the darkness, noting how naive it was to underestimate the gloom of the nameless dungeon without a proper lantern. Suddenly, a huge swarm of steel bats bursts out of the darkness, forcing them to realize maneuvering a large sword weapon in such tight conditions will be incredibly difficult. He shouts for her to keep her distance until the air explodes with the whistle and rustle of broken wings. He asks to quickly direct the light onto his hand to help his defense. When the light focuses, he prepares to unleash the technique called Leak of the 4 Gods. The blade tears forward with impossible speed, slicing the air and scattering fragments like water over dead leaves, leaving the spectators shocked by his combat skill. She seizes the moment and gives a quick, fragmented commentary, explaining to her audience the subtleties of his movements, while he remains frozen in the very heart of the clash. Until she stops her enthusiastic report, she breaks down his complex combination of downward, diagonal, and upward cuts, marveling at how he can perform such maneuvers with a heavy weapon. She perceives his continuous loud comments as a deep disgrace amid the life-and-death struggle, and in despair, he urges her to flee to safety. She definitely breaks through the crowd. The blade cuts the air with rhythmic precision as steel bats fall around. The announcer falls silent for a moment, slightly irritated that her explanation was interrupted, and the hall erupts in applause, praising her unexpected combat mastery. Due to the fierceness of the fight, the fencers insist on retreating, considering the situation too dangerous, but she dismisses his doubts with unwavering confidence. She points to the growing view numbers, and in her excitement, it is immediately felt as she reminds him that their training prepared her precisely for such pressure. He grips his gear even tighter, the knuckles whiten as he emphasizes that their main goal is, above all, mutual safety. The warrior looks at her sternly with a protective gaze without averting his eyes and insists that no injuries can be allowed. She responds with a calming, though condescendingly indifferent, smile. She laughs, unable to hide her amusement, while the group continues to press forward, leaving the chaos of battle behind. Finally, they reach the threshold of the deepest part of the cave beyond. The path sinks into eerie crystalline silence. She closely watches the comment feed and with a note of irritation and cold calculation, notes, their current viewership rating is stuck in second place and the chat is already guessing about competitors. Then she and her companions step into a huge, unshakable arch, the entrance to the deepest recesses of the cave. Darkness recedes and a stunning spectacle opens up, a tunnel lined with huge glowing crystals that illuminate the path forward. Pointing at the crystalline formations, she remarks on the beauty of these landscapes, already calculating how this unique scene will boost her popularity in the eyes of the audience. Their progress is abruptly cut off by a low, guttural growl coming from a creature curled in the shadows, its body wrapped in flickering flames. They freeze for a moment, recognizing the beast, a fiery dragoness, and an intense, suffocating heat spreads from her presence. Despite the danger, she addresses the viewers, assuring them, the dragon poses no threat to her companion, dismissing fears that it is considered a dangerous monster. Despite her companion's hesitation, who did not want to strike a creature showing no aggression, she orders him to finish off the beast, putting spectacle for her audience above all else. She carefully examines the creature, notices a strange blue tint in its flames and unnatural swelling of its neck, contradicting her initial assumption that it was just a reflection in the crystals. When the beast blinks, she sharply shouts to her companion to retreat, sensing the direct danger posed by the awakened predator. The dragon roars so loudly it rings in their ears, forcing them to realize their intrusion has disturbed a creature far more formidable than an ordinary flame dragon. It rears up, coils itself, and a wave of heat washes over them. Only then do they realize, before them is a rare and dangerous variant. He freezes in shock, trying to comprehend what an encounter with such an unknown specimen means. They study the creature's structure. Yes, its anatomy resembles a known species, but its ecology is fundamentally different. They confirm, this is a discovery that has not yet been recorded anywhere. Despite the mortal threat looming over them, she cuts off fear with chilling indifference, and her companion remains stunned by the complete indifference to danger. Asura stands ready, his great sword firmly gripped as he watches the creature. He notices, although its movements mimic a flame dragon, he remains alert and waits for clear proof of its true nature. He calls Missouri, warning to stay away, while the beast rushes forward with a low, thunderous roar that makes the ground tremble. The bastard unleashes a real barrage of fire, but he notices the range of the breath is limited, so he can maintain a defensive stance. He increasingly anxiously realizes that the flame has no intention of stopping. The relentless heat forces him to remain on the highest alert. Having studied the anatomy of the beast, he concludes it must have a special organ that allows it to breathe fire continuously without taking any pause for air. He performs a desperate maneuver, hurls his great sword into the air like a boomerang, and this technique so stuns Missouri with skill that it is visible to the naked eye. The weapon traces an arc in the air, and when it fails to return immediately, the creature prepares to strike back with a new, even greater force. Missouri shouts for him to close his ice end just as a blinding flash ignites. He is already preparing to seize the chance opened by the distraction. He strikes precisely. His blade cuts the air, intercepting the beast at the moment of the leap and instantly stopping the threat. With the defeated monster, he shares the moment of triumph with a comrade. Their successful teamwork is preserved for the eyes of the viewers. She recalls how brutal the battle was, admits her own negligence, and at the same time feels relief their first broadcast ended safely. He turns to her and gives sincere words of gratitude for the support that made their victory possible. The conversation shifts as soon as he mentions how that creature behaved, and he begins to doubt, maybe she has a unique power to talk to such beings. She dismisses this idea with a modest gesture and explains that it was not a conversation at all. He remains thoughtful and explains that his desire to convey STEM was born from realizing the creature is alive, a creature that feels. She looks at him, clearly moved by his unexpected depth and empathy toward their fallen enemy. She gazes at the flickering lights, reflecting on how few people see anything more in fairies than ordinary tools for magic. Suddenly bursting with enthusiasm, she reaches out and declares that she intends to be kinder to spirits, because their very existence is the reason these broadcasts are even possible. He looks at her and his face softens as he agrees, acknowledging that her happiness is contagious. Without warning, he lifts her into his arms and rushes into action while everything around them begins to crack and crumble. He carefully carries her away from the fragile crystalline structures that are falling apart, movements precise and steady. She suddenly gasps, her face flushes as she realizes how close he is, but she quickly assures him that she is fine. He places her against the wall of crystals and ponders, wouldn't it be better to simply shatter this obstacle with his blade, rather than look for a way around? She thanks him for the help, but he notes that he will need a moment to gather the necessary strength and clear the path ahead. He tightened his grip even more and his gaze locked onto her eyes, while the ground beneath him jerked wildly, signaling the appearance of a giant crystalline threat. The monster loomed over them, a burly crystal golem radiating an ancient and dangerous aura, so they understood, ordinary steel would not help against such an enemy. Nearby, their companions were bustling to catch up, shouting warnings about the critical condition, but they feared that the entrance was already being cut off by the growing collapse. He shifted his gaze to his ally and urged him to unleash his full power without hesitation. The revelation struck him so hard it took his breath away. They were trapped, and there was no time to carve a retreat path while the golem blocked their way. He glanced at the blade and his thoughts raced wildly through the impossible choice, how to engage the monster in battle and at the same time protect her. She stepped forward, her hands trembling as she declared her intent to fight, refusing to be a burden to those nearby. He saw her resolve falter. She trembled with fear yet remained composed to draw the golem's attention, and he was left to weigh the risks of her deadly plan. He watched as the giant, torn fist of the golem slammed into the ground, and a tremor rolled across the cave floor. The adventurer shouted for his companions to dodge the blows and ordered them to think about survival, not reckless aggression, while the crystalline beast hovered above them. He prepared himself, raising the shield high as the heavy hand of the golem crashed into the defense with a dull, deafening thud of collision. Resisting extraordinary strength, he focused through clenched teeth and felt his boots sliding backward on the stone while an ally anxiously called to him. She understood the key to their survival and snatched the warning with a scream. The life force of the golems was anchored in a single, hidden core inside its crystalline structure. He fixed his gaze on the glowing eye embedded in the creature's mass and immediately recognized the target. Then he lunged forward to deliver a precise strike. With a quick acrobatic maneuver, he rolled under the golem's blows, barely escaping deadly crushing, and took position for a counterattack. His blade struck with a ringing echo, shattering the surface, but as the dust settled, he realized with growing panic the eye had disappeared from sight. He gathered himself and prepared as the giant golem shifted, its shining core sliding across the stone surface, trying to evade his strike. After the blow, he confirmed to his companion that he was unharmed and said he had barely managed to scratch the creature's defense. Watching the struggle, spectators questioned the effectiveness of the expulsion stream technique, openly and directly doubting the adventurer's competence. He saw the golem preparing another assault. He pushed his partner and ordered not to stop, warning that standing still was a death sentence. She suggested he use his powerful destructive technique, but he admitted defeat, explaining that his previous attempts had left no trace. He also complained about the tactical disadvantage, saying that his maneuver disrupted the golem's aiming and made the attack impossible, and there was no time to charge his power. She calculated the logistics of the situation, whether she could hold her eye long enough for him to unleash all his strength. With renewed determination, she declared her allegiance to Golden Suny, urging them to work together to ensure survival. She stood before him, and her presence suddenly, quietly instilled understanding in him. He reflected on his own flaws, admitting that his obsessive concern to protect her had blinded him and prevented him from seeing the true extent of her abilities. Their hands touched each other for a moment, thus silently, a mutual agreement was born. With new clarity, he turned to her and asked for help, acknowledging that without her involvement, the obstacle ahead could not be overcome. She proposed a bold plan, to say that she would meet the creature face to face herself, but she needed him to deliver the decisive blow as soon as she restrained its movements. He accepted the strategy with a confident smile and was fully ready to deliver the final strike. When the strategy started, they moved in perfect synchrony, closing in on the fleeing golem to put their plan into action. A giant dark entity looms over the battlefield. Its mere presence is enough to make the earth tremble as the warrior prepares to strike in the name of true martial art. She barely avoids the devastating blow. Her focus sharpens as she prepares to channel the power of Gosh to hit the creature right in the eye. Because spirits cannot strike directly, the earth cracks under the impact of a sudden, blinding flash attack. The warrior froze in shock as the creature revealed a third limb. His astonishment grew even more when he realized fresh suffering was grasped. She exhales with relief after a narrowly avoided attack, quickly pulls herself together, and directs the creature's attention to herself. With a quick, precise movement, she launches the projectile, and it swiftly flies through the air toward the target. The shell hits precisely, landing right on the creature's eye, and with a dull thud, it undoubtedly silences it. She watches the essence of the creature and notices, even if it buries itself, the trace of Gashu makes its location impossible to hide. Holding a vigilant gaze, she freezes before the strike, the weapon clenched in a pose for the decisive moment. As if with unnatural ease, she dances around the spirit. Her blades flash and she strikes, adapting to the creature's own rhythmic sound. He shouts the order, strike the top of the creature's head. His voice cuts through the tension as she prepares the next move. In perfect synchrony, they launch a joint assault, leaping forward and delivering a devastating blow. He directs the power of the four divine gardens, unleashing the ultimate secret technique bursts forth with blinding light. The strike lands with devastating force. The blade cuts through the spirit's defense, and the Sting Xuan Wu technique comes into play. When the earth trembles from the strike, he observes the consequences, acknowledging the full power of the great sword's technique. He stands among the aftermath of the battle and watches as his partner celebrates the victory with an enthusiastic crowd. Her voice trembled with joy as she acknowledged the flood of positive comments. She again shifts her gaze to the broadcast, ends the stream with a modest smile while he stays nearby, noticeably relieved that the dangerous expedition in Azure Crystal Cave ended without new incidents. Nearby, an acquaintance approaches and, sincerely disbelieving, says that they actually managed to defeat the formidable crystal golem. His intonation mixed shock with a restrained, though reluctant, respect. He confidently gestures to his partner, proudly declaring that the true key to their success is their collective strength. His face radiates newfound pride and satisfaction. The newcomer, upon hearing about his current rank, clearly reacts confusedly and asks why the one whose abilities he has already seen is still stuck at C rank. He is not convinced. This, he says, is complete nonsense. She is boiling with criticism. Irritation is boiling over, and she responds sharply that their journey from Flame Serpent of the Burning Sky was exhausting, so probably the strict standards of the great guilds simply do not suit them. He listens carefully to the advice, nods in agreement as soon as they suggest taking a promotion exam after returning. He fully realizes, to advance further, he will have to keep studying. The conversation abruptly turns in another direction. The acquaintance dismisses their hard-won victory and bluntly states that success in the dungeon is nothing but pure luck. She silently listens as the critic coldly dismisses their efforts, insisting that due to lack of knowledge and experience they are just like an average person. The group froze in the caveth. Heavy burden of his harsh words hung in the air as they digested the devastating rebuke. He admits his own guilt and confesses it was he who insisted on assigning increased difficulty, although they were not properly prepared. Looks down at his hands and realizes how easily they could have died. Understands brute force is not enough to tame such dangerous depths. He quietly and gloomily apologizes to his comrades, and the entire burden of their nearly fatal mistake clearly weighs on his conscience. The critic gives a creepy smile and says that their death will be no more than a minor inconvenience. He changes his tone to commanding, demands that they continue to entertain him, and makes it clear despite his disdain for streams, he still closely follows the affairs of their guilds. The tension eases as they switch their attention to the fallen flame dragon and casually discuss what its meat is capable of, preparing to shoot footage. She goes live from the Golden Sun Guild dormitory, eager to share the freshest updates with the audience. Full of contagious energy, she emphasizes the guild's rapid rise. Their peak audience has surpassed 100,000, and the number of fan registrations has grown beyond 80,000. His companion acknowledges the impressive trick, but laughs at the awkwardness of his voice being broadcast to such a huge crowd. He notices how quickly his friend got drunk, and she excitedly predicts that their next stream will break records and reach 1 million simultaneous viewers. She lays her head on the table and exhales with relief, admitting how long she had been searching for this moment. He pours another serving and settles in to listen while she prepares to tell her past, and though he is surprised to learn there is a story she has not yet shared. She begins the tale with a childhood memory 10 years ago near the Graham Highway, when she secretly followed her father's crew and eventually slipped and fell, so they left her behind. Alone in the wild wilderness, she sadly realizes that she should have learned the communication spell to call for help. She screams in terror as the fierce beast lunges forward, its jaws snap and open right before her. The animal sinks its teeth into the prey with a disgusting crunch that hurts the ears. In the heat of the fight, a comrade intervenes and shouts for her not to get hurt. He drives the blade deep into the monster, forcing it to release its grip, and blood splatters all over the field. When the beast falls, he suddenly realizes the full weight of what has happened, calling for help as the only misfortune, while the tension of the battle begins to ease. A sudden flash of vision transports her to the past. She sees herself younger, reunited with her parents after a traumatic separation. She pours out a deeply rooted resentment and accuses them of always abandoning her and her sister. She returns to the present. Her companion urges her, "Move," he insists. They must report the incident to the association to claim the reward. She listens carefully as the traveler recounts his old attempt to find a young girl named Misery, admitting that his search in the guild in Graham yielded no results due to lack of concrete information. Reflecting on these words, she feels a surge of pride. The child she once saved has grown into a truly wonderful person, even if the circumstances of her past actions deserved harsh reprimand. He wipes a tear from his eye, clearly moved by the revelation, and she playfully announces to the room the freshest news that just broke on the air. The broadcast screen explodes with joy, millions of viewers jump up, and Melvish Channel instantly bursts into first place, leaving all competitors far behind. When the numbers exceed 1 million, he acknowledges the incredible scale of her success, yet she still remains modest and notes that their advantage is already under threat. She casually drops a phrase about her sister's genius, and because of this, he completely freezes in shock, begins to tremblingly babble, not believing what he heard, while trying to digest this sudden news. With a quiet and confident smile, she confirms the truth. Melvis is indeed her older sister, a fact she simply hadn't mentioned until this moment. The revelation hits him as if it were a physical blow. His eyes sharply widen in shock as he realizes the implications of her connection to the famous creator. His composure completely falls apart. He froze in complete silence while she spoke about her sister's influence, how those songs and that presence reached countless people around the world, giving her genuine joy. She flared up with enthusiasm again and explained that by working alongside him, she would finally be able to broaden horizons and try something new to bring fresh energy to their guilds. A sudden surge of energy disappeared just as quickly as it appeared. She went limp and immediately fell into a deep, quiet sleep. He watched her sleep, and the quiet creak of the floor pierced the silence as he pondered her words about how to enliven their shared path. Looking out the window, he reflected on the future of their reconnaissance streams and realized, without changes, they are doomed to repeat the same stagnant cycle again and again. A sharp memory surfaced in his mind, a reminder: their recent success in the dungeon was nothing but pure luck. He turned away from the window, and a new, resolute determination ignited within him. He understood, to truly help the guild, he must raise his own level. Clenching his fist, he looked into the distance, fully focused on the first step of his journey, taking the promotion exam for adventurers. The adventurous farmer, without distraction, directs his determined attitude towards the upcoming exam for promotion in beer ranks. He is convinced, only exhausting training is the sole path to victory. He pours the drink while his thoughts are occupied with the heavy preparations needed for the test. Suddenly he collapses in a heap, full of disappointment, and confusedly drowns in uncertainty about how to properly prepare for the forthcoming trial. Noticing his despair, a companion approaches closer and asks if he is okay. He trembles and replies that he is holding on somehow. She says that watching streams with strategy can provide the necessary hints, so she places a guide on the table to help him navigate the exam requirements. He expresses his anxiety about the written part of the exam, and she kindly offers to help him study so that he will be ready. They dedicate themselves to a strict study schedule and methodically go through each numbered lesson to master the material perfectly. Finally, the day of the promotion exam arrives, and she encourages him as he goes to meet his fate. He arrived at the venue, unaware that a woman who had long awaited to see his new challenge live was watching his progress. She clenched her fist in a gesture of quiet support and decided it was time to go, time to leave him alone with his face. Step by step he passed through the gates into the Birang promotion the exam space, and suddenly he found himself surrounded by a sea of determined young adventurers. An incredible number of peers made him feel overly alien, and he literally felt the combined gaze of all of them pressing down on him. A whisper spread through the crowd as soon as they recognized him, and people began to argue whether it was worth approaching the man known for his massive greatsword. One of the spectators stepped forward, extended his hand, and greeted him, expressing admiration for the flows he had just observed. The stranger introduced himself as Zohyo and admitted that he was also acting for the first time on the advice of the guildmaster. While the two men stood side by side, an official announcer's voice sounded from the courtyard. All candidates were called to hand over their weapons and belongings before the start of the exam. He stubbornly nodded to the new companion, and both agreed to give their all, as the exam commands required. When the written part began, he shuddered with relief. The questions matched the practical tasks he had studied. Nearby, some observer was closely watching his progress. He stared intently at the sheet, the pen quickly gliding over the page as he filled in the answer fields with new, confident strength. The observer, noticing his unexpected speed and skill, asked if he was resorting to forbidden methods to pass the test so quickly. Ignoring the accusation, he shifted his gaze to the next stage, the physical endurance test, where candidates had to pair up for trials of strength, running, and stamina. He agreed to the invitation to team up with a comrade, unaware that the man harbored a malicious intent to sabotage his performance, holding his legs loosely during squats. When the signal to start sounded, he immediately threw himself into the exercise, tensing his muscles to maintain a steady rhythm. He struggled with unexpected instability, feeling a crushing pressure that could knock him off his feet, while the partner deliberately failed to provide stable support. He looks intently at his partner, his face tense with fierce irritation when confronted with obvious sabotage that nearly caused him to fail the physical test. Tension breaks when the partner feigns an awkward apology. His sharp movement lands with a deafening jolt. Medical workers rush to the scene, their hands glowing with restorative energy. They stabilize the wounded and examine them. When he regains consciousness, the medical team announces the endurance test is over, and if he is able, he must proceed to the running test. The partner sprinkles empty praise about his fighting spirit, then turns away and prepares for the next phase. He froze in shock when he saw the same individual approaching him again, just as the proctors announced that the running test would be conducted in groups of 5. Despite the obvious danger, he stubbornly continues because he understands. If he stops now, he will be immediately disqualified. He takes his place at the starting line. His body aches, but his determination hardens as soon as the start signal sounds. He tears forward with extreme focus, his speed throwing opponents off balance. They can't keep up as he breaks through the physical pressure. Ahead lies the next challenge, and he prepares for the jumping part of the exam. With a powerful leap, he flew over the obstacle effortlessly, and others were stunned by his athletic skill. Spectators hum dully in shock and disbelief. Is his incredible performance obsession or simply pure talent? The team is gathering for the endurance test. They need to run 100 laps around the track. As soon as the race starts, Zohyo immediately stumbles, tripping over hidden caltrops scattered right underfoot. The focus shifts to the martial arts exam. Candidates must demonstrate their skill with various types of weapons or in unarmed combat. He steps forward to clarify the evaluation criteria, asks directly whether using multiple weapons gives additional advantages. He shows his mastery, easily switching from sword to hammer, spear, axe, and dagger, and stuns the examiner with his versatility. He is surrounded by an ever-growing crowd of fans, yet he remains humble, though the attention of fans of his unique fighting style is clearly increasing. Nearby, the atmosphere changes. A solitary figure sits in the dining hall while the crowd buzzes and whispers around. From afar, the opponent recognizes him, the same legendary god of plague, with deep resentment and fear about how the guild leader will react to all this ongoing chaos. Tension peaks as the medical team rushes by heading to the taming exam site, attracting the curious glances of those nearby. They carry a fallen candidate on a stretcher, a grim reminder of the bloody consequences awaiting those who fail the trial. Unfazed by the grim sight, when called, he confirms readiness and steps forward to prepare equipment for the next stage. He approaches the grand gates of the submission exam site. The final test will take place under the watchful eyes of VIPs. He stands before the examiners, who exchange sharp jabs about age and the upcoming performance of the great candidate holding a sword. The head of the Guild Association, Kate Allman, criticized the attire of the leader of the Adventurers Association, Begin Brimas, who laughed at this remark with loud, lively energy. They turn their attention to Obel, thank him for previous support, and acknowledge the intrigue he adds to the course of events. He enters the arena and the audience is immediately overwhelmed with confusion because they notice the absence of his signature weapon. The examiners are stunned to learn that he intends to fight with bare hands, a plan to measure his abilities without using lethal force against monsters. He reconsiders his change of perspective and realizes bare sword fighting does not save. Now he must apply the knowledge gained in training to exploit the specific traits of his opponents. He admits his uncertainty to a comrade and confesses, despite his bold statement, anxiety gnaws at him about whether his new tactical approach will work. She gives him a reassuring smile and he finds determination within himself, nodding to himself as he prepares to face the upcoming trial. He watches the arena gates as they open the trial, randomized syringes with threats, a mushroom, poison, and amoeba, and a crowd of goblins. Looking around the arena, he acknowledges the challenge with a calm, focused nod. The signal cuts through the silence and he immediately engages in the slow movement of the mushroom, closing the distance practiced to precision. He knows the mushroom releases toxic spores as soon as one approaches, so he pulls it with all his strength to scatter the danger into the air. Since poison amoeba is insensitive to physical blows, it uses the wind pressure from its swing to carry its jelly-like body, and it rolls across the floor. After that, he shifts his attention to the goblin. It is dangerous when they stick together or hide, but easy to handle if left alone in an open space. With a sharp cry, he delivers a mighty blow with the dragon hammer directly on the goblin, and it instantly dies. Looking from the observation deck, the examiners watch more and more attentively as he confidently celebrates his successful plan with the obtained grant. He stands in the arena and suddenly his attention is caught by the sound of heavy boots dragging on the ground. A man approaches and every movement is difficult for him. He drags a huge weapon behind him and mutters about how unbearable this burden is. From the observation deck, the spectators exchange confused glances, trying to figure out who this newcomer is and whether it is worth intervening. He calls out to the approaching figure, asks if he really dragged that heavy weapon all the way from there, and instead hears a sharp warning: the exam is not a place for games. The man's face twists with rage. His eyes wide open, he accuses him of unconscious blindness, reproaches shameless actions, and notes that even the usually restrained *sand is already driven mad. Stunned by the mention of the veteran adventurer, he can only repeat his name in shock, not believing his own ears. The enraged man raises the weapon high and declares that he will punish him for the suffering he caused to those who cared for Asura's-san, and with this begins a fierce confrontation. From the sky, a huge winged creature swiftly descends, snatches a sword right out of the air, while Gashu and his companion freeze in complete shock, trying to understand where such a creature could have come from at all. He freezes in shock as the weapon falls to the ground right in front of him. The beast lands gracefully and the man strokes its feathers, thanking it for the help as it settles down. He is called an S-rank adventurer and beast tamer SEMA bandager, and explains that he was specifically asked to come and observe Gosha's exam, so the boy was completely paralyzed with amazement. Saima shifts his gaze to the creature and calmly asks if he should remove this intrusive nuisance that is causing trouble. The beast dashes forward with incredible speed, slipping past the astonished spectators in a ripple of movement, like in a silent mirage. He tenses his whole body as the creature looms over him. His confusion instantly breaks into pure panic and he demands an explanation of what is happening. Saima points to the others, calling them the same scum that from the very beginning was wagging their tails and interfering with this exam. He stood firm. His very presence made the saboteurs panic as soon as they realized their hidden monster was neutralized. Out of despair and clumsiness, the beast twitched and swung wildly, but the blow was easily deflected and the attacker was shocked when its hidden poisonous trap claws were revealed. With a quick, precise movement, he approached on his knees and began treating the beast. His facial expression was unreadable as he addressed its suffering. He watched intently as the beast exhaled, and the tension in its jaw eased slightly while he assessed the situation. Looking at the fallen saboteur, he calmly suggested easing the tension and sitting down for a serious conversation. Then he shifted his gaze to the examiners, calmly slid the creature to them, and coldly advised the man to disinfect his mouth, while he rejected the gratitude evenly, without excess emotion. When the others stretched out, he firmly ordered them to release their grip. His authority left no room for objections. He finally turned back to Gash. His mood changed as he prepared to reveal the secret behind why he was specifically assigned to monitor the exam. He got his way, the gaze fixed, and he accused the other of cheating to sneak into the S-rank dungeon, although he only had a C status. The accused shuddered, sweat pouring down his forehead as he categorically denied the accusations and insisted that his party had followed all procedures correctly. In the quiet halls of the Graham Metropolitan Library, a young woman sat immersed in study, surrounded by shelves rising to the ceiling filled with ancient knowledge. She was interrupted by a man who approached and introduced himself as Sigurd, a companion from a previous expedition, although she could not recall his face at all. Sigurd sat down and explained that he had come to research the four divine bees style, and she politely acknowledged his presence. While they talked, he demonstrated the ability to use magic specifically for broadcasting and communication, and it impressed her so much that she clearly became flustered. Then he spoke with regret about the firefly's escape and expressed a keen desire to master illumination magic to better assist his future plans. Side by side, they turned to an ancient text and came across a technique called Skybox 1 that promised to become invaluable for their future research. She quickly apologized, but the stern librarian made a sharp gesture forcing them to be silent. Ignoring the reproach, she ponders how Gashu's popularity is growing and notes that his unique techniques are already being discussed throughout the city. He dismisses her praise and insists that he is merely a researcher of the four divine beasts, while simultaneously enthusiastically explaining all the intricacies of embedding spirits of flame into the blade. Their animated argument is abruptly cut off by the librarian. His face contorts with rage at their unceasing noise. She covers her mouth in embarrassment, realizing that her excitement had drawn her voice too far in the silence of the corridor. Somewhere nearby, a man stands before his companion and doubts the legality of everything unfolding right before them. He coldly stares at his target and with a grim smile says that such annoying adventures are better erased completely. The target flinches in shock as the man suddenly lunges forward, rapidly closing the distance in the blurred flow of movement. He sharply rushed forward and his fists struck with rhythmic, calculated precision. When the fight ignited, he dismissed his opponent's confusion and mockingly sneered, implying that he was nothing more than a dumb fool. The fighter paused for a moment, surveying the huge arena around him. He admitted, the situation terribly embarrassed him. He could not understand why he was thrown into such a public spectacle. Despite his embarrassment, he felt the weight of the crowd's expectations. He confessed that he had no clear idea of his own reputation, but the roar of the spectators fueled his determination. In despair, he demanded to be taught the true worldview of a high-ranking adventurer fiercely digging into his goal, to repay the faith that others had placed in him. His opponent gave a cold, calculated smile as if challenging, "Prove your worth not with words but with actions." Suddenly, the atmosphere changed. The man before him moved with a terrifying, newly acquired smoothness, and his fighting style instantly transformed into a merciless hail of blows. He barely managed to parry the incoming blades, and his eyes widened sharply as soon as he felt a cold shift in the opponent's aura, a sign that their intent had deadly shifted. The attack did not relent with blinding speed. He could not keep up with the opponent, who pressed the advantage and drove him into a desperate defense. He abruptly stopped the exhausting sparring. His powerful presence made the fighters part ways when he announced that the fight was over. Turning his gaze to SCMA, he sternly stated that the escalation of the conflict had gone far beyond the initial parameters of their request. He challenged the very idea that he had lost control and hinted, if his methods were deemed untrustworthy, the task should be handed over to Avril instead of him. The tension eased as soon as he introduced himself as Big N Bremis, the head of the Adventurers Guild. He apologized for the sudden and shocking intervention. He explained that during the exam he intended to pit the candidate against a worthy opponent, although he admitted, everything had gone too far and turned into an unnecessary trial. Surveying the aftermath, he acknowledged his long-standing interest in the candidate's potential, while others exchanged tired glances, resigned to the absurdity of the day's events. When the chaos subsided, he shifted his gaze to the candidate and officially congratulated him on passing the B-level exam. He stood upright, calmly reflecting on the trial, and later dismissed the previous attempt as a mere test of the traveler's thinking. He raised a soft smile and advised his companion to accept his defeats as an inevitable part of the learning process. With a decisive gesture, he confirmed that this is exactly where the essence lies. Turning their attention away, he advised them to go to the infirmary and check how his partner was doing there. While they were walking, he asked if his companion planned to earn higher ranks and noted, "Usually it takes 5 years of achievements to get an A-rank evaluation." He explained that the association supports an early promotion system. It allows qualified candidates to bypass standard waiting periods by guild decision. Then he proposed nominating his companion for this early promotion and asked to share thoughts about matters. Understanding overwhelmed him like a wave. He was being issued an A-rank license, a sign of prestige that now rested in his hand. He expressed concern that the increased workload for an A-rank adventurer might interfere with his streaming career, so he sought advice before fully committing to it. He listened as she insisted, the chance must not be missed. She pressed that she had a bunch of creative ideas for their future releases. Turning away, he decided to postpone the final answer, noting that the promotion would finally give him the freedom to take on high-level dungeons without asking for permission. A heavy sigh escaped him as soon as he recalled the bureaucratic nightmare with access to Azure Crystal Cave, a task that required coordinating too many people. Nodding in agreement, he emphasized the importance of better coordination and urged moving forward to avoid such complications. They agreed to go out for dinner to celebrate, although he jokingly warned, "Drink sparingly." Meanwhile, in the jaws of the scorching sky near the dragon, a sudden, insanely hard kick sent the man crashing to the ground while they bit him for complete helplessness. Chaos erupted when the guild members quarreled over the failed exam. Anger boiled over because there were no more travelers left and due to the drop in income from their streams. Amid the screams, someone threw out the idea to recruit Gasha again. Allegedly, he was seen at the exam site, so maybe after exile he trained like crazy. He tried to suppress distrust, shouting that it was impossible for someone once considered a burden to become so powerful in such a short time. The way his stream appeared on the screen only fueled the rage. There was no time to digest the sudden surge of his reputation. While the broadcast continued, they recognized the girl, the one walking beside him, a former member of their own guild. They were overwhelmed with confusion as he effortlessly dealt with a whole pack of monsters. The numbers on the screen were simply staggering, over 120,000 viewers simultaneously making their own modest 10,000 look trivial. Amid the shock, he casually recalled that he had recently decided to join the fan club, and it seemed he was not at all worried about the professional crisis unfolding around them. The atmosphere turned hostile as orders thundered sharply, "Fires Ohio immediately." He was pushed out of the guild without any hesitation. Frustration burst out, a heavy fist slammed on the table, and the tension that had been building finally released. Standing before the table, she coldly and restrainedly admitted that she had greatly underestimated his true capabilities. She looked intently and understandingly, silently waiting for that inevitable moment when the guild would finally realize the scale of the talent they had rejected. His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden, sharp guess. He needed to start his own broadcast, one so spectacular that it would be far brighter than anything his rivals could produce. He shifted his gaze to the distant shining silhouette of Chartreuse, the legendary establishment frequented by the elite, and wondered if the rumors about its incredible wealth were true. A sharp, predatory smile spread across his face as a cunning plan took shape in his mind. He immediately turned to his companion and ordered her to get 2 tickets to the closed platform, causing her to freeze momentarily at the unexpected request. With fierce determination, he whispered a silent challenge, promising that the world would soon see his true capabilities. She sat opposite her partner, playful yet calculating everything with an expression on her face, and she hinted those who underestimated them would soon receive a harsh lesson. An ornate man with a broad smile addresses his audience and announces that today's broadcast is now over. He freezes, his face changing as soon as he notices something or someone unexpected nearby. In the shadow, a young girl freezes and looks amazed. Her eyes widen as she recognizes the approaching figure. With a sharp burst of energy, he lunges forward, his face lighting up with excitement as he shouts that he has finally found her. He presents her with a small object and explains that he was looking for her specifically to return it. She accepts the returned object and exhales with relief. It is back in her possession despite the slight deformation it suffered damage in. The man silently watches, tears and a poignant, theatrical wave of emotions on his face. He is deeply moved by having returned the lost item. They stand shoulder to shoulder, exchanging apologies and mutual respect, and finally leave the misunderstanding behind. She tightly clutched the ticket, a mixture of shock and revelation frozen on her face. After watching the Golden Sun broadcast, she was overwhelmed by a deep sense of her own inadequacy, and she accepted this gift as an inevitable lesson in humility. The ostentatious adventuress insisted that she keep it, shining with delight as he spoke about his joy for her upcoming broadcasts. Then he turned to his companion and suggested putting the ticket to use. He did not intend to waste it. With a radiant, tearful smile, she accepted the invitation and praised the inventive man for his kindness. In a moment, the carriage rolled through quiet, moonlit streets, carrying them to their next destination. Inside the carriage, he admitted, the situation was a bit awkward, but at the same time confessed that seeing his companion so determined was truly refreshing. She listened attentively as he remarked that the outfit suited her much more than it ever would have suited him, and this momentarily threw her off. She could not utter a word. The shopkeeper confidently intervened, proudly noting that his establishment also specialized in wedding attire, and invited them to return if needed in the future. She blushed, lost in dreams of wedding rehearsals, while her companion nervously wondered if he had said something strange. The carriage stopped and he was the first to disembark, offering his sister a hand as soon as they arrived at the place. They stood before the luxurious illuminated mansion, both froze, struck by the enormous scale and beauty of the building under the night sky. Walking through the grounds, they froze from the atmosphere and immediately recognized the place, the most prestigious restaurant in the capital, Chartreuse. Inside, an employee checked the tickets and led them to the lobby, noting that a special vocal performance by MANGABOSS was scheduled for the evening. He was informed once again that the entire event would be broadcast live, and he confirmed this with a nod. As she wandered toward the huge stairs, enchanted by the surroundings, her foot slipped on the polished floor and she fell. He quickly reached out to support her, and they both noticed how treacherously slippery the floor was while regaining their composure. She extends a steady hand, offering help to the man who was unceremoniously knocked to the floor after her own fall. A concerned person approaches to check how the group is feeling, but quickly assures that everything is under control. He runs into a familiar face, notes with surprise that she is here, and says that he received a ticket to the guild's social gathering. She confirms her identity, and it turns out to be MANGABOSS. The revelation deeply impresses him. When she realizes her true identity, she introduces the hash to the woman standing before them. Feeling the need for privacy, she suggests he step aside for a moment and leaves him to fulfill her request. When they step aside, they see how the sisters interact, and they are filled with the wonder of this meeting, so weightless and surreal. She officially introduces herself as MANGABOSS Aronia and expresses gratitude for the care shown to her younger sister. He responds with characteristic modesty, downplaying the significance of his actions. He froze when she quietly smiled, saying she had heard everything about him from Missouri. She pressed a finger to her lips in a teasing gesture of mystery, and he twitched embarrassedly, demanding to be told immediately what exactly had been said about him. Meanwhile, the streamer shared her admiration with the audience, praising his modest and kind character and confessing that she dreams of one day standing next to him during a broadcast. She extended her hand to him and asked him to look after her dear sister, and this immediately threw him into a panic whirl of uncertainty about how to properly respond to such a gesture. An assistant approached and, waving her hand, signaled that it was time for MANGABOSS to prepare for the upcoming engagement. She firmly took his hand, clearly showing her gratitude for the meeting and inviting him later that same day to enjoy her performance. The physical touch overwhelmed him completely. His mind raced as he tried to comprehend the full power of that moment. With a final wave, she stepped away to perform her duties, and he remained watching while the rest eagerly awaited her performance. He stood in the huge hall, stunned by the sudden turn of events, and aloud could not understand what had just happened. An atmosphere of refined leisure prevailed around. Guests sat at tables and enjoyed the luxurious views around. In front of him, the table was adorned with exquisite dishes. Each was served with meticulous attention to detail. His companion, with sparks of delight in his eyes, looked completely enchanted by the dish, while he himself was clearly bewildered by the intensity of the feeling. She savored the rare, changeable salmon and marveled at the legendary taste of the great battle snakehand, completely drowned in pure bliss from that flavor. He acknowledged her feeling, noting how easy it was to lose track of time here, and reminded that Melboss's performance was about to begin. When the light dimmed, silence suddenly fell in the room. It signaled the start of the main event. The door opens and the honored guest, Melboss, appears. She steps forward to begin her long-awaited show. She greets her audience with a warm smile, addresses the live viewers, while a wave of praise for her beauty and eager anticipation of the performance spreads in the digital chat. As she steps onto the stage, the surrounding space begins to shimmer with magical light, and the gaze of a nearby observer fixates on her. The digital audience starts to stir impatiently with excitement, noting the elegance of her footwear and marveling at the colossal number of viewers already connected simultaneously even before the first note sounds. A subtle change in her expression breaks the gaze of a man in the crowd. For a moment he freezed. Did he really just see her smile? Bathed in a single, dazzling spotlight, she stands alone at the center of the stage, and the silence in the hall only amplifies the weight of the moment. She gestures elegantly, her composure not faltering at all as she prepares to captivate the hall with her voice. Nearby, musicians tune their instruments and wave to the guests. The performance is about to begin. With a sharp, powerful release of energy, she begins to sing, and the audience below freezes, completely stunned by the power of her presence. A few people sit together in a dimly lit room, their faces focused as they hold a quiet, serious conversation. She gestures with her hands, and there is excitement in her voice as she talks about someone truly special. Her companions momentarily lose their speech. The realization continues, and she recalls how her sister worked tirelessly from a very young age, singing day after day, hoping to leave a mark that would remain in others forever. As she speaks, she confesses to the whole group. Once she felt envy toward her sister, a secret she had hidden and not revealed until now. She describes the complex range of feelings she experienced watching her sister gain fame through her broadcasts, rejoicing in her success while simultaneously feeling a taste of her own inadequacy. Lowering her eyes, she admits that she lacked those special traits that set her sister apart, and that it was hard for her to find her own path. He listens attentively, then calmly offers another perspective. Missouri has her own unique courage and knowledge entirely her own. Missouri raises her gaze, and softness appears in her expression as she begins to accept the truth in his words. She looks with wide-open, shining eyes. It is clear that she was moved by the words and feelings shared with her. A quiet laugh escapes her when she notices that her sister, Melboss, once said the exact same words to her. Reaching out her hand, she makes a gentle gesture of connection, and her face softens into a look of calm understanding. The atmosphere changes as she admits her love for this song, and the same words are repeated by her interlocutor across the table. Adorned with grace, she rises onto the stage, and her fingers dance over the keys as she pours her soul into the melody. When the last notes fade, she stands before the audience and sincerely thanks them for their presence. Digital count suddenly jumped. Over 1 million viewers celebrated the privilege of seeing such a performance in their lifetime. Noticing the commotion about an unexpected guest in the comments, she elegantly ends the stream, promising to return soon. She watches as the patron points his index finger at the dish and accusatorily demands an explanation for why such dangerous ingredients are served in this establishment. Tension rises. The man, recognizing a familiar face, exclaims in shock that Asiris unexpectedly found herself amid all this fuss. He steps forward, introduces himself as the restaurant manager, and calmly responds to the accusation that a bone of a poisonous scorpion was found in the dish, while the surrounding guests begin to whisper anxiously. Asterisk considers the situation. The venom scorpion is indeed dangerous, but its black bones are noticeable and rarely found in such cases. She maintains composure, decides to broadcast this unfolding conflict under the title, and hides in the elite restaurant to attract viewers' attention. The manager categorically rejects any possibility of contamination, assuring that their kitchen strictly maintains quality control, but his words are met with skepticism by those demanding proof. Chaos erupts when the next visitor finds a similar black bone in their dish, triggering mass panic and mutual accusations that the contamination is not an isolated case. He freezes in shocked disbelief, trying to reconcile the manager's words about high standards with the undeniable evidence on the tables. He sits opposite his companion, his gaze sharp and unwavering, until the tension at the table reaches its limit. Nearby, a patron clutches her chest and gasps for breath. She is suddenly overcome by a sudden, disgusting weakness, and a man nearby reacts with immediate, noticeable panic and despair. The restaurant descends into chaos and the visitors whisper in shock. They realize that such a prestigious establishment has suffered a catastrophic failure. He lets out a low, eerie laugh, pleased with how the disaster is unfolding. Gand leans forward to address his companion with a cunning demand to attract her attention. With a cold, calculated expression, he insists that even a former commander cannot ignore the full extent of what is happening before them. He carefully examines the object, confirming his suspicion. It is not a bone from a venom scorpion. Looking around the nearby tables, he notices only those eating this dish are suffering, which hints at the use of a specific poison. He decides to take control of the situation. He sends his companion to gather information while he focuses on the investigation. Returning to his associate, he asks him to examine the suspicious bone, noting that they are right in the middle of a delicate situation. His gaze narrows as he realizes the culprit does not know the true nature of the poison and intends to exploit this blindness. He reaches out his hand and grabs the object with his bare palm, shocking everyone around. People fear it might be toxic. Examining the thing, he confirms it is definitely not a venom scorpion bone, and his partner is stunned by his own accuracy. He explains a real poisonous scorpion bone, if held up to the light, should be semi-transparent, and its structure is completely different from what he has in his hand. He confronts the man, demanding to know his identity. The man nervously admits he was just a farmer named Gashu who got scared and confused under pressure. Because of this statement, he continues his explanation and describes how poisonous scorpions often hide in the crevices of medicinal herbs during the rainy season, and during harvest they inadvertently become a real nuisance. When the tension shifts, people nearby notice the suspicious nature of his testimony. They whisper that he really was a former farmer, and one of the observers urges everyone, focus on the magic unfolding. The atmosphere becomes oppressive dark. A creeping magical film spreads across the floor, drawing attention to this through a terrifying phenomenon. She freezes in shock, staring intently at the dark substance, and immediately recognizes it. It is the same poison from that doomed day. Her gaze hardens as realization dawns. Meanwhile, the spectators are distracted by the spectacle. They comment on the charm of the woman in the dress and the chaos of what is unfolding. She addresses the group in a calm, analytical tone and explains, according to the magical text she recently studied, such anomalies occur when the caster's concentration is disrupted and then their magic becomes unstable. With her insight, a wave of relief suddenly washes over the sick. The nausea disappears as if by magic. She stood her ground, demanding that the broadcast be stopped so they could discuss it in private, away from prying eyes. Responding, he challenged her, questioning where she got such confidence in the nature of this magic, and dismissed her words as insufficient evidence to call him the culprit. Stunned by his defiance, she said, his testimony alone will not prove his innocence, and demanded to know how he could be so sure of his own words. He gave a self-satisfied, knowing smile, implying that although his past actions were dubious, words remain absolute truth. The tension in the room grew as he argued that only he broadcasts, but even if the remains are found, there will be no way to definitively link them to him. He leaned back, cold, unyielding voice, and again challenged them. If they want to keep dragging accusations, let them show real, tangible evidence. Suddenly, the focus shifted to her. She raised the device, and shock and revelation mixed on her face as soon as she saw the name on the screen, MANGABOSS. During the review of the recent broadcast, it became clear that the woman had secretly placed something on the plates around. She stood among the crowd, her calm appearance hiding tension while she was asked if she had anything to say in her defense. He erupted in a fit of rage, pointed an accusing finger, and vehemently denied any involvement, insisting that the magic and all actions taken were exclusively her own business. Gossiping whispers noted his orders were too obvious, and such transparent attempts to absolve himself would not be accepted. Under increasing pressure, a hand reached out to grab him, implying he would go with them for further interrogations. He jerked and sharply pulled away, shouting for them not to touch him as he tore himself from their grip, trying to break free. When he tried to escape, a voice ordered him to wait, but he shrugged off the others and, doomed, tearing from the spot, rushed to flee the clash. The strain proved too heavy. He fell to the floor and twitched, trying to hold on while the full weight of what had happened pressed him down. He is still pinned to the spot. The captor looms over him, holding a cold, unyielding gaze. The man recalls the ingenuity of his comrade and admits he had always admired the brilliant, unexpected ideas that seemed to appear spontaneously. Continuing his thoughts, he admits, The attempt to run his own broadcasts made him feel the real difficulty of the matter, how hard it is to create content that both he and his audience could truly love. The lifter grabs his patients in thin clothing and jerks them sharply, demanding silence with a harsh, aggressive command. In a sudden flash of defiance, he clenches his fist and lunges forward, trying to break free from the hole. As the struggle intensifies, he questions the very essence of the broadcast, whether this is really the path his companion intended to take from the very beginning, and his kidnapper explodes with a fierce, desperate, frenzied scream. The attacker strikes and unleashes a technique called Dragon Hammer. Palms slam into the target with a thunderous, devastating force. The blow throws him off balance. The things he was carrying scatter across the floor as he loses his footing. He falls to his knees, stunned by the sudden surge of his opponent's strength, and can only guess, has he become weak or did his adversary simply outmaneuver him in a moment? He lies on the floor, curled up, defeat still pressing on him like a heavy stone, while the guests around continue their evening and seem unaware of his plight. A woman approaches and, breaking the tension, introduces herself, Misha, from the Duke's house. She says she admires Gash's broadcast and calls with all her might for a joint stream at the estate. The gathered crowd shifts their gaze to the commotion. Curiosity on their faces changes to anxiety as soon as they see what is happening. The man speaks haltingly with deep regret and admits, under any circumstances this happened, letting a stranger into their ranks was a terrible mistake for which he takes full responsibility. As the situation begins to calm down, the men discuss the consequences, doubting Gash's involvement and whether the recent clash was really necessary. He recalls his past and reflects, the man who once served him as a senior would definitely have been angry seeing the scale of the recent chaos. Wincing in pain, he begs for mercy, acknowledging that he understands the suffering of all those affected and asks if they can find it in their hearts to forgive the guilty party. Watchful observers look on silently. Their faces are a mix of shock and focused contemplation, and the weight of the plea hangs in the air. He stands in the noisy banquet hall, not averting his gaze from how relationships unfold, as the atmosphere shifts from tense to relaxed and festive. They sat in a private VIP room. They discussed the meeting with the guild representative, wondering if it was a gesture of thanks, some gift, or perhaps an official conversation about the broken plate and needed compensation. He usually worries too much about such things. Suris and Gasha meet with the restaurant owner. He expresses deep gratitude for the recent help and makes an official request. He offers them to become sponsors of his establishment, Golden Sun, and the travelers noticeably freeze at the unexpected proposal. The owner explains this is not just thanks for their past deeds, it is a serious business offer. He talks about his desire to obtain the highest quality monster meat to feed his regular customers ingredients better than anything available in any other establishment. Yashu hesitates and scratches the back of his head, acknowledging that their business is still in its infancy and perhaps not ready for such a commitment. She bursts into the conversation with infectious enthusiasm, insisting that turning down such a wonderful opportunity is a terrible waste. Melbus Aronia calmly observes the exchange, noting that although the new venture may be intimidating, the genuine desire to support them should be accepted with dignity. When the path forward is already open, the group agrees to a partnership, exchanging words of mutual gratitude and looking toward a happy, prosperous future. He lingered in the lush Chaltro's lobby, turned around and addressed the woman who had called him. His facial expression was heavy, he could no longer remain silent. She listened attentively as he struggled to gather his thoughts and admitted he had long wanted to thank her, although until now he had not managed to acknowledge her performance. He fumbled for the right words, his hands flurried as he confessed his inner turmoil, while she looked at him with a soft, patient gaze. Suddenly bursting with sincerity, he declared that her singing had deeply touched him and sincerely thanked her for how her voice had affected him. She accepted his praise with dignity. A gentle smile slid across her lips as she vowed to continue singing, finding meaning in the connection she had built with her audience. As they stood together, a sudden interruption broke the moment. A young woman rushed up to him, begging him not to leave her behind, her voice trembling with exhausting urgency. He turned to acknowledge the newcomer, and while the two women exchanged a warm, sisterly farewell, he pondered the promising future of their guild. Under the evening sky, he looked at the illuminated spaces. Reflecting on the noisy gathering and heavy gratitude, he thanked Weiss for the opportunity he had been given. He suddenly burst into thought, what sudden power there is in it. Was his simple expression of gratitude enough to ignite that fire in her eyes? She admits that she feels admiration for her rival, yet firmly states they both need to watch out for other opponents and she does not allow herself to be outdone. Encouraging him to keep pace, she suddenly stops sharply. Her attention is caught by something or someone hidden in the shadows. They freeze in shock when a small figure with a pack on his back approaches them and suddenly realize the traveler is Ryu. A sudden, palpable tension spreads in the air as they stand before the exhausted traveler, and their hearts beat together from the unexpected meeting. He leans closer and focused anxiety appears on his face as he examines the heavy mechanical device that Ryu was carrying. The focus shifts to the ground. There lies an unconscious girl with fox ears. They freeze, not understanding who she is or what brought her to this state. The farmer looks over the harvest with a satisfied smile, seeing that the crops have grown far too well. He shifts his gaze to the door, from which a young girl with fox-like features cautiously steps into the light. Noticing that she is not asleep, he explains, he brought her to his home because he could not just leave her behind. She looks up at him, clearly not understanding where she has ended up. She asks him to teach her to swim, but he hesitates, noting that as a beast person she probably knows more about it than he does. Yet she does not back down, insisting that he lead her. Having agreed to help, he orders her to start with the basics of technique, and she enthusiastically accepts his offer. He orders her to try pushing off the air, and she immediately starts spinning, trying to master these movements. Suddenly, Gashu bursts inside and shouts that an emergency has occurred, so the girl freezes in shock right in the middle of her practice. She introduces herself to the viewers as Roko, thanks them for still watching her, and notes that there is no one else. Returning to the table, she praises Gashu for his teaching talent, but he modestly reduces everything to just acting as a mentor. He recalls how he learned about the broadcast from her grandfather, a revelation that suddenly throws the little fox cub off balance. She explains that her grandfather studied ancient texts to master the techniques, but it was difficult for him to teach them properly. Confidently smiling, she boasts about how easily she mastered the morning exercise and declares that she is a genius. She admits, while many are seeking training, she came on her own so as not to cause problems for others. Suddenly she bows low and begs him to take her as his apprentice. He reacts reservedly, clearly stunned by the honor of being recognized by the prestigious Shishinden school. He looked down at the young Foxen, who did not back down from her sincere request to take her as a student in the Shishinden School of Learning. Without agreeing to anything, he still forced himself to agree to help her in everything he could, and could not help but notice the strange, archaic manner in which she spoke. She froze, distracted by a barely perceptible nostalgic smell, one that reminded her of mice, although this thought seemed to confuse her. He offered her to live with him for some time, and explaining that his daily routine revolves around the farm, added, her presence would be a welcome help. The next day the group went out into the endless open steppes just outside the royal capital. They started the broadcast with the traveler introducing himself and his companion to the viewers with a bright, practiced smile. The digital interface was flooded with messages. Viewers exploded with joy at seeing him again and eagerly discussed the latest news about the sponsorship deal. He addressed the chat, thanking them for the support, then turned the spotlights to his special guest, leaving the audience in excitement and curiosity. He proudly presents his new companion to the viewers, and as soon as she appears, the chat erupts with delight. Everyone calls her cute and can't believe that such an unexpected face has come to visit. She again shifts the focus to their broadcast. Rocco is here to observe, but they need to quickly return to the planned content to make up for the previous delay. With a winning move, she shows the daytime challenge. She starts preparing a huge piece of wild boar meat, and he only sighs at the thought of the scale of this task. The streamer starts her broadcast, engages in conversation with the viewers, and offers a new challenge. She is hunting for ingredients to cook a dish. She boldly declares that her target is the great boar, which immediately causes concern among the reviewers. They say the danger level of this creature is extremely high. With a radiant smile, she turns to advertising a restaurant, urging subscribers to visit and experience the flavors she recently tasted. Returning to business, she notices a beast in the distance. It is already destroying local farm fields. His companion, Gashu, is preparing for the hunt and gestures that they are ready to move according to plan. The large boar still does not suspect them and continues to snuffle the ground among the crops. Gashu narrows his eyes and determination hardens. He decides to stop the destruction of the farm immediately. He draws his blade and freezes in stance before the throw, ready to intercept the beast before it can cause more damage. He tenses and fixes his gaze on the giant beast, preparing to execute a specialized technique. With a sharp explosive jerk, he delivered a devastating blow. The force of the thrust sliced through the air. Seeing the threat, he roared for the fox girl to run away, but the creature was already upon them. Its size was simply overwhelming. In a sudden burst of strength, the fox girl intercepted the beast, and both the beast and the streamer were stunned by her raw power. When the dust settled, the streamer went live and told her audience about the incredible trick, marveling at the hidden abilities of the beast people. He apologized for the miscalculation, acknowledging the unexpected strength of the fox girl while also noting how much excitement it brought to the viewers. They exchanged looks of mutual surprise, still recovering from the full force of the just experienced encounter. The next day, the streamer greeted her audience and announced that in his absence, she and fox girl would take over the kitchen. She lifts a piece of wonderful meat for the noodles soaked in wine and asks the young fox girl to gently knead it with her bare hands. The girl apologizes for the mess, but her companion only strokes her head and says that the chaotic state of the meat is exactly what is needed for hamburger patties, and the online viewers laugh. As they prepare to move on to the next step, the door opens and a familiar face returns. Everything instantly switches to maintain the broadcast pace. Gashu returns home and finds a complete mess. His face immediately changes to worry as he asks if someone was attacked, but in response, he hears a joyful greeting. He listens while others admit their culinary attempts did not go exactly as planned. Their guilty smiles reveal the chaos left behind. The digital audience watches the broadcast with amusement, praises the help of the fox girls, and teases the streamer for her clumsy culinary failures. Despite the previous chaos, the final dish, a hearty minced meat patty served with fresh vegetables, looks unexpectedly appetizing. They sit together and start eating. The tension of the day fades as they share the dishes prepared during the stream. When the meal is finished and the broadcast quiets down, he reflects on how warmly the viewers have already accepted the fox girl. Exhausted by the day's events, he decides to leave early and leaves the cleaning to others. Before leaving, he stops and looks closely at the fox girl, noticing a strange, fleeting expression on her face, one that does not fit her usual behavior during the broadcast. She was sitting alone, looking at the night sky until he approached and quietly, carefully broke the silence. Under the glow of the full moon, she confessed that she had been watching the moonlight, and he simply acknowledged her words. Returning to him, she admitted that she had something to apologize for, and he was momentarily stunned by her sudden change in mood. She began to tell how 6 months ago she came across a broadcast with him, a moment that forever etched itself in her memory. While she spoke, she described how observing his interactions with spirits opened a new world for her, and how it brought her true joy. Her face suddenly darkened when she admitted that she had sent a comment during that broadcast influenced by others' negative judgments, and now she deeply regretted it. She confessed that her grandfather later scolded her, teaching, judging a person only by what is visible on the surface is a terrible mistake. He listened attentively and understood. The lesson she learned was this: never judge a person's true character only by superficial signs. He listened carefully while she told how she spent hours watching his old episodes until she finally reached a conclusion. She explained that she came to him not as a villain, but as a man who holds his power for what is right. Despite the change of heart, she admitted that the burden of her past actions still remained, so she could not look him in the eyes and apologize properly. Pressed by the weight of her own remorse, she broke down and cried, sobbing, begging for his forgiveness. He looked at her with a gentle gaze and admitted that he too often had to struggle with his own past decisions. Recalling the recent conflict with Asuras, he lamented that he resorted to forceful methods instead of finding a path that would better understand. She sharply raised her gaze and her eyes widened as she realized she too needed to gather herself and face her own mistakes without running away. He thanked her for the courage her honesty brought him, and when they shared a moment of mutual understanding, she embraced him and finally he found peace. He sat quietly next to his companion until a familiar voice broke the silence and asked if she could join them. She explained that she was looking for him to discuss Roko and that she planned to bring up the same topic. They exchanged a look full of understanding, and their unchanging gazes reflected the full weight of their shared concern for the young fox girl. Turning back to the girl, she extended a warm invitation and asked if she wanted to join the Golden Sun party. The young girl lifted her gaze, her eyes wide with disbelief and hope, and barely whispered a question if it was really allowed. Under the glow of the full moon, the trio sat together on the roof, and a new closeness was born between them as they looked at the night. Gashu sits opposite the official and discusses the latest events related to Roko. He modestly deflects praise for his actions, insisting he did nothing extraordinary. The official acknowledged his sincerity, recalling that the decision to take responsibility for Roko was not just a reaction to a child's words but a true choice to face the situation head-on. He expresses deep gratitude and recalls how their meeting allowed him to learn truly profound techniques of the Shish and Enryu styles. The conversation changes as soon as he pushes Gasha to further spread the name of his school around the world, a request after which the traveler becomes noticeably determined. Suddenly the air thickens, he abruptly cuts off the conversation, apparently distracted by some urgent matter. He remained alone with his thoughts. He wonders whether to inform Roko about all the difficulties of his martial arts and fears that it would only worry her in vain. The next night he gathers with Roko and everyone who will be there, announcing a tour of the Golden Sun base to welcome the new member. When they approach the huge building, he notices a dim light and asks himself why they came at such a time, yet they still head to the reception desk. He led forward through the spacious lobby, explaining that this property was once a guild place that was wildly sought after, fully furnished and spacious, so he was left only wondering why it was abandoned. Next to him, the streamer was glowing with excitement. Reports of ghostly appearances were accumulating, so an unexpected element of a bravery test would appear in their stream that night. She cooled her enthusiasm with a calm reality check. They say the rumors persist, but those from the association who stayed here overnight reported nothing unusual at all. She admitted that she herself had not seen anything yet, but still confessed. The very sight of ghosts actually fueled an even greater excitement in her to go inspect the building. Entering the conference hall, she said she hoped the night tour would finally reveal the secrets hidden in the walls. Noticing Foxy's sudden anxiety, he gave her a reassuring smile and told her not to worry as they headed to the dining hall. A sudden, icy sensation washed over him as if a ghostly presence was approaching from behind, and he let out a trembling, forced laugh. The chat exploded with warnings about something lurking behind him. He looked back in from the darkness, stretched out a bony hand to grab his arm. He shudders from shock when a bony hand touches him. His panic reaction broadcasts live to viewers who mistake real horror for a masterful performance. A spectral entity appears and disappears from oblivion while he shrinks with doubt in his own senses, trying to discern the invisible threat. Quickly searching for the source of the disturbance, he frantically scans the room while the fox girl, relying on her heightened senses, tracks the scent of the entity. Resolutely deciding to catch the prankster in the act, they begin pursuing the creature, unaware that the broadcast is capturing every moment of their dangerous reconnaissance. The chase leads them into a trap. From the darkness suddenly emerges a skeletal figure, jumps right at the fox girl and greets her with a terrible, empty smile. The floor suddenly collapses and a frightened scream breaks out. A dark, ghostly figure emerges in the shadow. Her companion rushes forward, worried about her safety, but she remains calm and assures him she is fine, unharmed. Among the debris stands quietly a mysterious chest with treasure untouched, an unexpected find in this empty and abandoned place. She reaches for the chest, but the spectral creature suddenly jumps forward, growling threateningly, warning, "Do not touch." The air thickens with tension as the presence of the spectral guardian growth body of space vibrates with icy energy. The spirit demands that she release her chest immediately. Empty eyes burn with a possessed fierce possession. Panic covers when the group abruptly retreats. The spirit growls, begging them, "Throw the treasure and leave it here." Objects begin to fly into the air in a fit of a wild poltergeist flare, forcing adventurers to gather together and hold on as a storm breaks upon them. He steps forward and firmly declares that they will return the chest unharmed, hoping to appease the restless spirit. He stood unwavering, covering his comrades, and ordered them to stay away from the chest. His face hardened as determination grew stronger. Seeking to calm the entity, he reached out to return the chest, but his palm passed through the ghostly form without a trace. The spirit surged upward in a cacophony of anger, showering him with reproaches for his foolishness. Empty eyes burned with outrage. Realizing the futility of physical contact, he listened as the spirit suggested, used telekinesis to control the object, and finally issued a shy apology for his previous aggression. When the tension subsided, the spirit took a bottle from the chest and noted that it seemed like a sensible entity to talk to. He exhaled with relief and saw the contents of the chest miraculously survived whole and undamaged. Exhausted by the chaotic encounter, he decided it was time to stop the broadcast and finally rest. Above them loomed the guardian spirit from the spectrum, appearing as the local spirit of this place and offering them to ask any questions they might have. He gestured toward the wrapped item, asking what it was. the otherworldly guardian explained. It was a collection of treasures he painstakingly gathered for his wife far away at home. The spirit did not stop and revealed. He had remained here since his death to ensure no one stole anything, though he admitted he had been careless with previous inhabitants. She froze in shock, realizing the spirit had been watching them all along, even observing their broadcasts. She accused him of invading their privacy, and he retorted by pointing out the audacity of their own past actions. Then he turned his gaze to the group and gave a sharp piece of advice: they should have more shame. At the same time, he admitted that human women hardly interested him. She listened attentively, her gaze changing repeatedly as she contemplated how the spirit sees humanity. The spirit suddenly stretched out a bony finger and declared that she had correctly recognized a werebeast in him. The skeletal figure joyfully greets the encounter with the beastly unclean again and says that it cannot leave its current dwelling, but still feels generosity within and offers a gift. He hesitates, stunned by how easily he gives away such a treasure. He says if she returns home sooner or later, it will be appropriate to hand this thing over to the family of the original owner. The young fox cub in a fursuit asked to name the family. Her curiosity flared up from this demand. He pauses his empty gaze for a moment and a sudden memory lapse strikes him. He admits that memories from his past life seem to have disappeared as soon as he died and promises to tell more if he remembers anything else. Turning to the bottle of aged alcohol, he asked her to take it to the old man named Yagi, hinting that it needed a little more time to mature. He warns her not to drink it alone, and the others, observing his unexpected kindness, remain silently surprised. She listens attentively as the traveler expresses concern over Yaga-san's sudden back pain and understands how serious it is. The skeletal figure greets the company with familiar warmth, teasing the traveler, implying he is aging because of his own back. She respectfully and formally bows, solemnly handing the task to Foxkin, who accepts the responsibility with a somber nod. The conversation changes as soon as she begins to tell about the encounter with the beast wagon, and by the end her story ignites the traveler's curiosity about this mysterious figure. He freezes, eyes widen, and a sudden sharp realization pierces him as the meaning of her words dawns on him. She notices the tension and sees that Yaga-san seems pleased, yet remains wary of those who might try to exploit the old man's love for spirits. Fox-tailed one watches the skeletal figure, her face revealing nothing as she processes this strange encounter. She focuses on the bony hand. A moment of recognition flashes in her memory as she looks at the familiar bracelet. She tightly grips the bracelet, and a sharp breath escapes her. The weight of the revelation settles like a blow. 5 days ago, the skeletal guard escorted them, promising peace. The dormitory would be under watch until their return. Ahead lies a path requiring the skill of an S-rank adventurer to pass the treacherous gate entrances to the dungeon. They stand ready alongside loyal companions, prepared to face the trials that await them. They exchanged greetings while Sigurd introduced himself to the young foxman, establishing a fragile alliance. With a smile, he remarks that taking a child into an S-rank dungeon is too bold, a leisurely walk for an A-rank adventurer. The group freezes in stunned silence at their faces frozen in shock when an unexpected observation appeared. The group rides together in a horse-drawn carriage. Road to the forest is already underway. He asked to clarify their destination. Lagruna Forestan doubted whether it was really the place mentioned on the broadcast. The traveler explains that he intends to gather plenty of flour and doubts whether his companion truly understands the dangers of the foresto, the point of embarrassment. He tells that the forest is a treacherous place. The trees themselves shift, so maps are useless, and the true nature of the dungeon remains a mystery to many explorers who enter it. Glancing into a guidebook, they talk about the rarity of the plenty of flour, noting that it changes location every year and is highly valued as a precious ingredient. The conversation shifts to the sweet nectar of the flower. She hopes to use it to make sweets and recalls how well people received his past culinary experiments. Noticing her hesitation, he offers help with the next task, and she is momentarily distracted upon seeing him in Aprish. She watched in fascination as her companion frantically flipped through the guidebook, his eyebrows furrowed in anxiety as soon as he saw the grim warnings about the inescapable nature of the forest. With pride, he revealed a magical item, the spider thread of heaven, and explained that it would be a reliable tether. It would lead them back to the entrance if they got lost. Glancing at the experienced beast hunter, they inquired about his past adventures in the Lagrina forest to find out how truly dangerous it was ahead. He explained while they consulted with the fox girl to forecast threats, there was no need to panic. Their team had the strength to overcome any creature they might face. With a steady hand, he adjusted his gear and admitted he himself would like to note every creature in the forest, but the work still remained terribly difficult. The veteran warned them not to underestimate the forest inhabitants, reminding them that even familiar monsters behave unpredictably in their own home, but then confirmed their capability as high-level adventurers. The carriage burst into a sharp, screeching brake, and with the touch of its wheels marked their arrival at the edge of the mysterious, shifting forests. They stood together before the glow, an exquisite magical seal carved directly onto ancient trees. The portal into the forest was already open and waiting for their first step into the unknown. She stood beside her comrades while the veteran beast tamer confirmed that he would continue to stand at the entrance just as before. He gave a final, tired smile acknowledging the full complexity of their task, but showing that he intended to see them off. Barely moving his hand, he pushed them forward, relying on each to find their own way through the difficulties ahead. The leader turned to his party, and determination hardened in his gaze as he declared that it was time to move forward. They set off toward the shimmering vertical crack, the gate to the forest, open and waiting specifically for their arrival. Crossing the threshold, the group vanished into the dense, ancient thickets, leaving behind the world they knew. The road ahead stretched into the unknown, a quiet, overgrown path wound ever deeper into the very heart of the changing forest. A charismatic streamer greets her audience and announces that they have arrived at the Lagna Forest for another exciting stream. She talks about the purpose of their journey and searches for the legendary Printastock flower, which blooms only in this particular S-rank dungeon. Suddenly, she notices a treasure chest hidden among the roots and excitedly shows it to her companions. While her companions argue whether it is a mimic, she playfully turns the situation into a quiz for her viewers and asks them to guess what is inside. She confidently declares, while others might dismiss it, she intends to check, and this immediately causes a wary reaction in her team. Without hesitation, she strikes her chest, and the wooden container instantly transforms into a grasping, aggressive, clicking imitator. When the creature lunges forward, she laughs. The accurate prophecy has come true, and her comrades panic and scatter their defenses, fending off the sudden threat. The group stands amid dense, ancient trees in the forest, ready to face the dangers lurking in the shadows. She curiously examines the strange, dandelion-like flora and notes that she has never encountered such a specimen before, while her companion comments on the strange nature of these mountain vegetables. The group freezes, and suddenly a wave of nostalgia washes over them as they think about how people live in their village. A sudden piercing scream breaks the silence and immediately makes Foxy Longtail and her partner flinch from surprise. Beneath their feet, the ground treacherously slips aside with a suffocating slide, and it turns out they accidentally stepped on a hidden web. Suddenly, she lets out a confused scream, and thick, sticky tentacles burst from the shadows and grab her. They struggle in vain as the winding vines tighten their grip, pulling both the fox girl and her companion deeper into the trap. A monstrous predatory plan grows. Its petals unfold and reveal a B-rank threat that begins to hungrily coil around the prey. They convulsively try to break free, but the plant vines prove merciless. They have to draw their weapons in a panic attempt to survive. She desperately pushes her companions to flee quickly. Her voice cuts through the tension as a huge, toothy bloom looms over them. In the chaos, she cries out for help, asking if this creature is really a plant, although she suspects it is actually much scarier. With a sharp, cruel snap, the predator tears the moss and its jaws snap open wide, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. As the plant is about to strike, he does not retreat. He holds his position and extends his hand, preparing to release specialized equipment. He lunges forward sharply, putting all his strength into a devastating blow, and shouts the name of his technique as he aims to cut a hole in the plant. The traveler warns his companion, "Draw your weapon, monsters are hidden somewhere nearby." She apologizes for not noticing anything. Nearby, the fox girl watches everything and thinks that the expression on her face looks almost deliberately provocative. He continues the broadcast and notes, "The local monsters are too strong, so you can't approach them directly," although he appreciates being able to safely observe the scenery from home. They stop in the dense forest, irritated. Despite all the progress, that biting beauty of the flower still does not appear anywhere. Fox Girl says that the flower, as claimed, preserves sweet nectar after being soaked enough in sunlight, and she honestly admits, without flying to the sky, nothing can be confirmed. She suggests simply tossing it up to get a better look, but he immediately rejects this idea, too dangerous. Ignoring his warning, she jumps into the air herself, searching for the scent of nectar, and he stands and watches, still unable to feel anything. Suddenly, she catches a faint sweet smell and excitedly points to a specific spot, forcing him to go and look where it is from. They find a cluster of lacuna goblins and lacuna mushrooms, growing wildly in the clearing. She stood in the middle of the dense forest and watched as lacuna goblins crawled around, surrounding their group. With a grim realization, she understood they were completely trapped. Arrows whistled through the air from every direction, forcing him to panic, draw a huge blade, and deflect the incoming projectiles with a wide arcing strike. He sharply shouted for her to stay low behind a large tree, confident that the arrows would not reach her high position, and she responded with a brief, sharp nod. The warrior scouted the perimeter, and the frown on his forehead deepened as soon as he realized fighting directly against distant monsters was a losing battle. He needed a new strategy to break this deadlock. Suddenly, the ground beneath her gave way, and she fell into the thicket, hitting hard, and confusion grew as she realized something was wrong. He turned at the sound of the collapse, and his eyes widened with alarm as his partner disappeared into the earth. His voice caught in his throat as he called her name. Fox Girl watched from where it was visible. Her ears twitched in shock when she saw both her companions suddenly vanish from sight, and she was left alone to wonder what exactly had happened. She closed her eyes, and a wave of remorse overwhelmed her as soon as she realized she should have noticed the danger the moment her companion disappeared. She watches from a safe height on a branch while the cart still rolls through the dense, mushroom-filled forest, unaware of the danger lurking underground. Isurus looks at his fallen comrades and with grim certainty understands they were incapacitated by toxic spores. He warns that these spores paralyze the body, but lacuna goblins have natural resistance and they will be on them at any moment. The fox girl remains sitting above, eyes wide open, fear and calculation mixed in them, and pondering the next move, quietly whispers to herself, "So, what will you do now?" The group is restless and presses against each other to wake up faster, while at the same time wondering, is the fox safe if she is not on the air? He realizes with growing fear, only the streamer knows how to use the technique, so pulling the fox girl out of this situation is almost impossible. Determined, he calls his companion and insists they need to set out to save everyone before it's too late. The adventurer reflects on the harsh truth of his mission. If he is defeated, it is only the limit of what he is capable of. But he urges his comrade to stand and prepares for the upcoming clash. With a strained creak of tension, he raises his huge saber and exhales with relief. The time for their counterattack has finally come. He squeezes out all his remaining strength, realizing, despite the overwhelming pressure, he can still make his body move. When the creature lunges forward, he understands with a heavy heart his defense may not be fast enough to intercept the blow. He tears forward, the blade slicing the air, trying to cut off the viscous, pulsating tentacles and catch the fox girl. The creature's fingers squeeze even tighter, and with growing horror she realizes, if she goes lower, she too will be devoured by the same parasitic force. Struggling to stay upright, she feels her movements being shackled. She can't even control her transmission equipment because her strength is beginning to fade. Suddenly, the air is pierced by a sudden, disgusting sucking sound, and she shudders and gasps in surprise as a dark jelly-like mass starts dripping onto her in streams. The parasitic entity, a dangerous rank by Laguna amoeba, envelops her, and her movements provoke mocking comments from an invisible audience watching the feast. She screams as the creature sucks the life force from her. The pulse of life noticeably stretches from her body into the translucent mass. Seeing the hopelessness, the spectators whisper grim words. Someone says this might be the end of their journey. They analyze the threat. Laguna amoeba is slowly draining her energy, so they estimate that full consumption will take a whole day. She remains trapped, and nearby a traveler questions the urgency of the situation, suggesting there is still time to launch a counterattack. He abruptly steps forward and shouts for the creature to release its grip. His voice cuts through the tension as he prepares to intervene. The strike does not sever the connection. He lacks the strength to break the parasite's hold. Desperation in her eyes, she understands. The amoeba must be removed immediately to save her companion. He suddenly rushes forward, movements whirl a vortex of dust and energy as he tries to knock this creature off its place. Suddenly, she is enlightened. By repeating the movements based on the vines she saw earlier, she will be able to create a tornado without touching the ground. They meet, eyes silently agreeing, before she orders to perform the great wheel technique. She sharply begins to spin, her body turning into a continuous blurred motion until the technique works at full power, spinning a powerful cyclone. She successfully pushed the amoeba out. Watching the dark mass fly away, exhausted but relieved, she checked the streamer. It confirmed that although numbness still holds, she can already move. Then they looked around, realizing their companion had disappeared from sight. Yasha rushed into the thick of it, holding a massive sword high. He flies down onto the mountain terrain to meet the approaching threat. He tears through the powerful technique Sheridan Isin and, cutting the air electrically precisely, knocks down enemies around. He sees complete chaos. The streamer shouts for him to return, and the fox girl says that only he can repel such an all-directed attack. The young fox girl lands confidently on the ground, and her posture immediately changes to combat as she prepares for the next wave of clashes. An earth explosion sounds as soon as she raises a protective barrier, and she reproachfully drives away her opponent who lost focus in the heat of battle. In the blink of an eye, the fox girl disappears from sight, and her companion freezes in shock, feverishly searching for her. A sudden, strong blow rolls through the air in waves as a fist hits an invisible target, and the silence of the clash shatters into pieces. She stands amid the settling dust and repelled the attackers, crushing them with explosive force without any embellishments. She delivers the decisive blow movement smooth and precise, while swiftly neutralizing all remaining threats. Praising her performance, he shifts his gaze to the streamer, who quickly assures them she is unharmed and focused on capturing their heroic efforts for her audience. When the immediate threat is behind, he signals the counterattack, and his determination strengthens as he prepares to break forward. Surveying the quiet forest, he acknowledges that the skirmish has finally ended, and the area hangs in tense silence. She apologizes for her earlier hesitation, and he suggests they take a break, review their gear and skills to ensure they are better prepared for what lies ahead. The streamer addresses her viewers, announcing a short break in the broadcast so the party can recover and regroup. While the group finds a moment of rest, the forest settles into deep, silent stillness. Bathed in the soft, filtered light of the treetops, she finds brief shelter from all the burdens of their journey. Her steps fall into shallow water. The cool liquid washes away the remnants of the recent skirmish. Nearby, her companions rest by the shore. One sighs heavily and grumbles about the sticky, nasty residue left on the skin, while another warns vigilance must not be lowered until the very end. He shifts his gaze to the girl with bald ears and praises her precise use of the earth barrier during the fight. Then he smiles, suggesting this technique might even be repurposed to clear paths through the fields. As the conversation continues, the streamer decides to check the incoming comments on the broadcast, and as soon as she reads the screen, her face changes sharply, a sudden, sharp fright. Streamer, fully immersed in the broadcast, notices her own comments ignite more excitement than the adventures of her companions. She pauses, her gaze sliding to a small hole in the ground. A sudden curiosity flares up through the hidden empty opening. Her voice breaks with alarm as she points out that the wounds on the creature have disappeared, and the companions rush to her, confused. Seeing how quickly her wounds heal, they decide to collect samples for further investigation, while she is strongly advised to dress properly in the meantime. They surveyed the surrounding forest and noted with concern, the landscape seems to have shifted since they last saw it from above. To forge a path through the dense thickets, one of them suggests using force emulating the destructive power of a great storm. He questions the advisability of climbing the web, considering its rarity and high cost, while she remains hopeful about their aerial route. Deep in the forest, the fox girl freezes for a moment, sensing something unusual in the air as they move further into the unknown. She dashed forward and called to her companion to follow her as soon as they reached the glowing, hidden entrance to the cave. They knelt before a cluster of rare, sweet-smelling flowers with a picturesque imprint and marveled at the discovery. The young fox girl beamed with pride, basking in praise for her sensitive nose and accurate finds. She carefully pulled out the plant, explaining the delicate process of preserving the roots so that the nectar remained intact. When the sample was securely fixed, she showed that this was only the first part of a broader plan announced on air. She excitedly laid out the plan for the next stage. The collected nectar was used to bake sweets right on camera, to the delight of her exhausted but speechless companion. Suddenly the ground beneath them gave way, and her companion fell into a hidden pit. She froze, her ears twitched as she just felt something truly eerie lurking in the very depths of the earth. She senses danger even before the ground begins to tremble, and shouts a warning as the soil beneath them violently tears apart. He immediately orders the others to scatter, grabs a heavy blade and drives it into the unstable ground to anchor himself and survive the shocks. The earth tears upward and he is thrown into shock. A giant armored creature bursts from beneath the soil. He freezes, unable to understand how such a beast could hide in these forests. A gigantic worm-like monster looms over him, its torn maw gleams as it prepares to strike. The giant monstrous creature lunged forward, its jaws snapped with terrible force just as the traveler raised his sword to meet the attack. The blade cuts into the beast's skin, but it proves as hard as stone, forcing him to pull back as he checks if his companion is safe. They identify the threat as a sandworm, a desert predator that swallows entire caravans of traders, leaving nothing behind. Having obtained the flower stamp, he urges their group, flee immediately while there is still a chance. He calls him to wait, and a worried urgency flashes across her face. The danger is obvious. If not stopped, this creature will inevitably migrate from the desert to inhabited places into the forest and the city. Panic flares among the spectators. A giant worm looms over the settlement, and desperate cries break out that now is definitely not the time to joke. He tightly grips his sword, deciding to stand to the end and defeat the beast right here, while the fox girl steps forward to offer her help. He stood silently, thoughtfully weighing the consequences of the conflict unfolding before him, and wondered if others were going to intervene. A giant sandworm loomed over him, its incredible size erased everything around. He realized this was just a juvenile, and it was probably drawn to the oasis because other creatures were there. Nearby, the streamer doubted the wisdom of their inaction and insisted, "It's enough just to watch and the world will see their presence, so they must seize the moment and join the fight." He acknowledged her correctness, agreeing, if they are to help, they must do so directly, and he noted that engaging against the monster is a risk they can endure. With calm determination, he explained that he had no intention of leaving the city, but instead believed, let others face this challenge in their own way. The fox girl dashed to position, her slender figure blurred in motion as she prepared to distract the giant creature. He lunged forward, the blade struck the creature's hide, but there was no effect. Realizing he needed to repeat the technique he once used to break a golem, he relied on Fox Girl, let her create a breakthrough. The ground trembled wildly as the worm prepared a counterattack, and he shouted to his comrades in despair, "Be ready for the incoming strike." He tensed as the sandworm bared its jaws and unleashed a blinding, deafening explosion into the sky. The force of energy tore the air to shreds. The adventure narrowly escaped a devastating beam. It leapt into the air while the ground beneath it crumbled to dust under the relentless pressure of the creature. Seeing the beast's destructive power, the fox girl screamed in panic. She insisted they had no chance and that retreat was their only possible option. The creature bursts from beneath the earth and releases a high-pressure jet of sand. Asurus surveys the devastation, realizing that such an attack capable of splitting both stone and forest is truly incredibly formidable. He cannot find a breach. The blade fails to reach the beast, it burrows deep underground. Frustration grows as he realizes how securely it is hidden. The monster lunges forward, again forcing him to dodge. Missouri shouts a warning, identifying where and how exactly the creature adjusts its strikes and rebounds, urging him to be ready when it gathers strength for another attack. She presses against a tree, eyes wide open, watching the chaotic battle while her supplies lie scattered nearby. As the dust settles, she notices delicate petals of a beautiful flower drifting in the sharp contrast to the cruelty unfolding right now. Suddenly, the ground collapses beneath her. The monster's jaws snap shut mere inches from where she stands. He rushes into battle, intercepts the creature at the moment of attack, shielding it, and the blade strikes precisely, piercing through the monster's hide. The beast twitches in pain, he explains, knowing that during attacks it exposes its belly. He was able to land a decisive blow for the first time. He realized a single powerful strike to the creature's underbelly would be enough to finish it off. When the dust settled, the group exchanged jokes. One said that now was the perfect time to wash up because the battle seemed to be already won. However, they remained on alert, understanding that despite the chatter, the situation was by no means relaxed. He frowned, his brow furrowed as he admitted that their current approach would not allow for a proper counterattack. Turning back to his companions, he asked how they could possibly drive the beast out while it stayed in the air, emphasizing that hitting it without solid support was incredibly difficult. She quietly spoke up, acknowledging the need for greater strength, and her companion jokingly praised her insight. The fox girl gathered herself, demonstratively signaling readiness, and took a defensive stance before executing the plan. Suddenly, the creature lunged from above, forcing him to react instantly. The ground cracked from the impact of its landing. He clenched his teeth as the earth beneath him treacherously and sharply gave way. The soil crumbled, cracked, and collapsed into a sudden, bottomless chasm that opened right under his feet. A giant creature leaps out of the forest undergrowth, and the traveler involuntarily exclaims in surprise. The towering jump throws him off balance. Nearby, the fox girl writhes in pain from her wounds, urging her companion to hurry because she understands how dangerous it is becoming. He stands ready with his blade, and the streamer notices. The webbing is too strong, it cannot be cut by ordinary means, even by the combined strength of the whole group. The traveler calls to her, begging her to take the fox girl and retreat to safety, while she herself prepares to channel the spirit's power into her weapon. She watches with irritation as the conflict flares up and complains, due to the distance, it is impossible to capture the best shots for her broadcasts. Suddenly her interface changes, a double stream appears in the window and she freezes in shock while viewers flood the chat with questions about this unexpected event. Now the live broadcast clearly shows the aerial clash, so she stirs up the crowd, urging them to cheer for the traveler as he fights high above the ground. He sharply propels himself into the air and, swinging his blade, performs a powerful technique aimed with a single, decisive strike to bring down this creature. He watches as the giant creature finally falls, its threat subdued by the decisive blow. Turning back to her audience, the streamer beams with joy and shows the rare flowers they gathered while the defeated creature lies motionless in the background. They talked about the road home, wondered if anyone would come to meet them, and lamented how hard it was to navigate without the spider silk they relied on. Smiling at the group, the beast tamer adds a soothing tone, acknowledging how tired they are from the day and how relieved they finally feel the dangerous task is completed. The broadcast reaches the Adventurer Association. Officials scrutinize the footage and prepare to investigate what is happening in the forest. He explains the seriousness of the situation and says that the appearance of such a creature in the forest cannot be ignored, so they will have to file an official report about the encounter. The group agrees with the plan and moves on with a clear goal to prepare for what remains after their battle. He looks at the fallen beast, weighing whether their arrival here was truly accidental or the result of something much more deliberate. The day begins with the familiar, exhausting routine of farm life. Tending to the crops continues under the quiet morning light. He reflects on the unexpected turn of events and admits he has been stuck in this live broadcast mode for 3 days, to the point that he started relying on others to tend the garden. Suddenly, a devastating, heartbreaking sight appears before him. The vegetables have completely wilted and he freezes in shock and confusion. In anger, he realizes, no matter how much he tried to water them morning and evening, the crops did not sprout, and it turns out he can't even leave the farmstead to address this problem. The burden of defeat strikes him mercilessly. His shoulders slump as he stares motionless at the destroyed harvest, unable to believe his own eyes. She approaches him, extends a bottle of water, and advises trying to use it to see if it helps the situation. As soon as the water touches the soil, a miraculous transformation occurs. The wilted vegetable begins to swell and astonishingly quickly regains its vitality. He watches the restored crops in fascination and learns that the water came from a lake in the forest which has healing restorative properties. He thanks her for the timely intervention. He watched as she examined the bottle of water, and he saw a mysterious, destructively powerful energy flowed noticeably and confidently within it. Even the reconnaissance team noticed it. She immediately suggested putting the water to use, assuming it might even improve the quality of their preparations with it. With a sharp burst of energy, she splashed the water onto the crops, and he was stunned by the incredible power of her action. She turned to him with a radiant smile and said that supplies were still lacking and they would have to return to the lake for more. In a moment, she addressed her audience and announced a new challenge. They would not return home until they defeated 500 field monsters. The surrounding fields were taken over by the Gimmer riders. Their swarm spread so widely that no one could safely approach the harvest. She explained that they helped the farm owner during the harvest while simultaneously hunting pests, though she couldn't resist teasing him about his overly enthusiastic grimace. He took the helm in his hands and ordered her to carefully destroy the Gimmer riders without damaging the valuable grain while he prepared for the reaping. He gave the signal that he was ready, and the girl with the bald ears nearby sharply and clearly confirmed the order, holding a ready posture and preparing for what lay ahead. With a smooth motion, he unleashed the butterfly dance technique. The blade sharply cut through the air and a huge insect emerged from the crop's chitinous. Its jaws clicked in a threatening rhythm. Noticing the impressive size of the creature, he remarked with a grim smile. The beast chose to attack them directly rather than flee, and that was exactly what worked in his favor. Engaging in battle with the swarm, he immediately realized the scale of the infestation far exceeded their initial estimate of 500, and he bitterly observed that they were like moths drawn to the scorching summer sun. After successfully diverting the immediate threat, he wiped the sweat from his brow and signaled to his companions it was time to shift their focus to the harvest. so the spectators had to continue watching their progress. The girl with the bald ears closely watches the monster, noting its body and aggression have intensified, as if echoing that past terrifying incident. She questions the unnatural surge in crop growth, recalling how the landowner insisted that the sowing areas had not changed. Pointing at the picket fences, she urges her companion to take a closer look at this strange change. The soil emits a strange smell, and she notices the grain has ripened far beyond the usual harvest time, and the news confirms a surge in monster activity nearby. The next day, they decide to report these findings to the guild, inspecting the fields once more before departure. The following day, when they arrived at the guild, they were warmly welcomed by the members of Golden Sun. The streamer reads the official report and announces that the recent recruitment campaign was a colossal success. She playfully suggests stopping by for tea later and bringing along the girl with the fox ears, but she is quickly reprimanded. Focus on your work. She stood before the guild official, and in her eyes anticipation suddenly soared to a sudden, wide-open realization she had just processed what she was told. The atmosphere remained businesslike as the guild workers acknowledged the effectiveness of their work, but the fox-eared girl nearby seemed to sense a sudden gloomy shift in mood. Without hesitation for a moment, she sharply turned on her heels and took off running. Her boots thudded dully on the floor as she rushed to take control of the urgent matter that had just come alive again. She dashed with wild energy and gave her companion new instructions. They were not to look for an autograph. Instead, they headed straight to the office on the second floor. Upon reaching the place, she firmly knocked on the door, her heart pounding wildly as she prepared to enter the room where high-ranking officials awaited. Inside, she froze upon seeing a familiar face. MANGABOSS sat comfortably, nudging an exclamation of surprise as the reality of the event finally began to sink in. The man with impeccable posture stood up to greet them and introduced himself with polished courtesy. Kate Almond, president of the Guild Association. He gestured for them to sit down. The tone was serious. He asked them to tell in detail about the reports they brought, making it clear that the time for pleasantries was over. She listened as the man before her reported that he had just received a similar report from the president of the Adventurer Association, Biggin. He further explained that MANGABOSS, streamer number 1, had asked viewers to be cautious in these areas. The conversation turned to how things are going now. They mentioned the recent surge in monster population and strange activity in the Graham region. Tracing his finger over the map, he showed that reports from adventurer dispatches to various locations indicate that these anomalies are not limited to monsters alone. He added that in the fields of this area there are also signs of abnormal growth, a phenomenon related to the waters of the Sinals River, which originates in distant mountains and flows to the sea, nourishing local agriculture. Realizing the implications, he asked them to wait a moment while he processed the weight of these discoveries himself. Then he pulled out a sample and showed that the analysis of water taken from a tributary of the Sinals River near Lagnaforst revealed a specific alarming component. The revelation hit hard. Traces of black stone from the ceiling remained in the water, an ancient artifact once used to contain powerful and dangerous monsters from an era long before the current spread of broadcast culture. She explains how serious it is. The contamination in the Sinals River likely comes from the black ceiling stone upstream. It emits magical energy. Her eyes widen sharply as she comprehends the terrible consequence. This means that the monsters once imprisoned in the stone are beginning to revive. She clenches her fist and her gaze hardens with determination as she confirms they are assembling a group for reconnaissance and to prevent at all costs the return of these ancient threats. The traveler announces that tomorrow he will set off to a village in the upper reaches and asks if he can join the expedition. They agree and note the local guide will allow the investigation to proceed without difficulties and go smoothly. He asks if he can take his companions with him, assuring that they will not get in the way. The guild representative expresses gratitude, confirming, as soon as the black stones are found, they will be managed just like the dungeons. Raising a hand, the conversation quiets down. She asks if it is possible to broadcast the investigation if they keep their location secret and avoid any problems. Documents show that there are several black stones, so visual recording will be needed for future reference. He agrees, noting that raising awareness among many will be beneficial, and welcomes cooperation. He listens attentively as the conversation shifts to how important it is to spread truthful information about possible disaster dangers, while others emphasize the need to avoid unnecessary panic. Continuing the briefing, he says that the Golden Sun protects people from monsters and that spreading this knowledge to society is vital. The group responds with friendly enthusiasm. Voices rise in a unified chorus of affirmative shouts as they prepare for the task ahead. Elsewhere stands an empty glass. The last of its contents have been drunk, and this means a moment of irritation for the visitor at the bar. The patron demands another round. His voice cuts through the silence in this establishment. He suddenly explodes in a fit of rage, cursing the circumstances and the injustice of his current situation. Still boiling with anger, he intently looks at the document demanding compensation for damages, and his irritation boils over as he contemplates how to sever ties once and for all. While the tension still holds, the broadcast begins. MANGABOSS appears on the screen and seems to address the audience with an important announcement. She continued the broadcast, warning the audience that the number of monsters in the Gram region has sharply increased, and urged everyone who encounters a large dark stone to immediately contact the Adventurer Association. In the tavern, visitors whispered about the broadcast. They said that the man with the huge sword could easily deal with any monster instantly, so they were safe. They glanced at the mysterious hooded man, trying to figure out who he was and what heavy weapon he held in his hands. Suddenly, the innkeeper slammed his palm on the counter and demanded an explanation of what this stranger had done to his regular customer. His voice was hoarse with anger. The hooded man retreated into the street and muttered curses under his breath. His anger grew as he finally realized he was being kicked out. He froze and his eyes widened sharply with sudden understanding when he noticed a group of travelers nearby. Nearby, the team coordinated their next actions. One member confirmed that he was investigating Blackstone, and another took responsibility for the vegetable crops. Shadowly observing from the darkness, the hooded man pondered the rumors about Blackstone and the legends of monsters sealed there, and wondered if the streamer's words were true. He barely smiled when the mosaic finally came together in his mind, revealing to him the investigation regarding Blackstones, the recent surge in monster activity, and that broadcast from Elbis. Clenching his fists in anticipation, he whispered a grim promise to make Gasha pay for the humiliation he had to endure. 3 days after their departure, the group approaches Maslif, their return filled with expectation, and the weight of impending changes already felt on their shoulders. Their energy does not subside. They will wonder if everyone is okay, and if they will manage to prepare before the investigation even begins. Suddenly, the air thickens. A fiery dragon descends upon them, and its presence demands immediate attention. He calls everyone to stay in the carriage for safety, moves forward himself to confront the threat, and resolutely does not allow the hunters to interfere with his duty. The beast roars so loudly that ears ring, and its gigantic figure looms over the village as he freezes in horror and trembles for the safety of the people. When the creature lunges in attack, the rank adventurer intervenes. His blade cuts into the monster's body, slapping against the skin with a crash, and he realizes with shock how incredibly tough this beast's body is. Chaos escalates, terror flares, and a wyvern joins the slaughter, circling overhead with deadly intent. He turns to his grandmother and hands her the defense, and she accepts the challenge calmly, ready and steady, holding her weapon with practiced ease. He freezes in complete stupor as the monster's jaws snap shut. A sudden, furious rage of the attack momentarily stuns him and his comrades before the sheer scale of the threat. They gather instantly and roar, demanding everyone hold the line under the beast's pressure while the flying lizard circles high above. Leaning against the incredible weight of the creature, the defenders struggle for balance. They understand the purely physical burden this clash demands. A warning scream cuts through the air at the very moment when a massive spiked tail with deadly intent rushes at the edge and barely grazes those codes in its trajectory. Noticing the chaos, they exchange worried glances, sensing that something has suddenly changed in the monster's behavior. With a decisive strike, a strong hook lands and the bees retreat just as the clash begins to sway towards confrontation. They involuntarily raise their eyes, watching in confusion as the creature suddenly settles and loses its aggressive momentum, leaving them surprised by the sharp change. Above the battlefield, a mysterious force appears. It pins the dragon to the ground with a radiant, ephemeral seal that radiates colossal power. He stands among the ruins, checking on his companions as they recover from the fierce clash. He brushes off praise and admits, if he had acted with more finesse, everything could have been different. Nearby, the crowd begins to stir as the danger recedes. An official voice cuts through the hum, assuring everyone, everything here is safe and they can calmly head to the village. Once the threat is neutralized, he shifts his gaze to the spoils of battle and orders the others to start dragging back the huge beast for a future feast. One of the comrades teases him about his grim expression and says that even a famous traveler shouldn't look like he's already been broken. he grumbles in response. Maybe they're just stronger than they seem, but warns his friend not to get cocky. The group gathers together, the tension of the clash finally releases, and along with the warm welcome, they feel a sense of relief. The village lies peacefully in the shadow of towering mountains, unaware of the narrow escape that just happened right at its doorstep. The group raises wooden mugs high, clinking loudly, proclaiming a toast that echoes in the air to celebrate Gashu's return home. He laughs at the teasing, saying that juice is already set aside for tomorrow, and someone jokingly remarked that he and his companion look just like a married couple. She sits nearby and enjoys the meal while the villagers look at her and say that she looks exactly like Gosha's daughter. The young fox girl suddenly leans forward and begs the woman to take her as an apprentice so she can learn how to deal with monsters, but she is immediately stopped. First, she needs to build physical strength. He shifts his gaze to Sigurd and says with relief that he is very glad such an experienced expert has joined the investigation team. The conversation turns to logistics for the next day. They agree to bring others with them for the planned meeting with the village elder. A heavy mood settles over the table as they discuss the troubling presence of something dangerous lurking near the village. He ends the argument by asking to warn the villagers to stay within the village until the investigation is over, hoping to avoid unnecessary fuss. He stood by the window determined to track the black stone along the river at dawn, knowing that the dangers of the night made the journey immediately unwise. Returning to his companions, he handed out bottles with similarly quietly evaporating perfume and thus ensured that everyone was ready for the darkness ahead. The preparations were finished. Ed urged the group to rest, showing that their work for the day was complete. Suddenly, an unexpected proposal appeared out of nowhere. The fox girl would stay with them at home for the night, and for a moment he seemed stunned. He leaned closer, his eyebrows furrowing in surprise as he began to inquire what it meant to spend the night in such close embrace with her. An explanation was given: the local housing was overcrowded, so they had to accommodate her at home. He could only emit a confused sound of surprise, trying to comprehend the sudden change in their living conditions. From outside, the small hut clicks its latch, the lock falls into place, and the silence, deepening with the night, cuts the house off from everything. He gestured toward the bed and insisted that the guests take it for themselves while he would find somewhere to rest. A firm tone, but without pressure. She clasped her hands and offered a gentle, disarming smile, agreeing. As if to say, sharing the space would be perfectly fine. His face flushed a deep crimson, and he was completely bewildered. The proposal turned out to be quite unexpected. In the cramped space there was no room for two, and he nervously pointed to the lack of space, while she carefully did not even notice how his anxiety was growing. He accepted the situation with a heavy sigh. He resigned himself to the arrangement and noted that there was little time left for their plans. Settling at the table, the group turned their gaze to the upcoming expedition, discussing rumors about Blackstone. A dark story appeared about ancient monsters, creatures that inspired terror by their very presence, so that even the bravest warriors could not help but tremble. He leaned closer and his eyebrows twitched with tension as he asked how their predecessors could have possibly withstood such a devastating force. The elder pondered the nature of fighting demons. Such clashes go beyond human understanding and do not fit into simple imagination. He explained that the Shinjinryu style is based on a deep secret technique. The spirits of sky and earth are directed into one's own body. Asha listened attentively, frowning, while contemplating the colossal scale of Genbu's technology. The elder admitted he could only provide an approximate plan, but believed that Gasha was capable of mastering Genbu. In a moment, the two travelers parted for the night, exchanged brief farewells, and prepared to rest. As he was already turning to leave, the fox girl froze for a moment. Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as soon as she realized she had forgotten something important. She called forth a radiant light to guide their way, and you, damn it, looked back in surprise, because suddenly it shone so brightly. Asha smiled and, thanking her for the help, invited her to continue the journey together. He listens while his companion remarks on his rare gift, the ability to communicate with spirits, and adds that she had never met anyone like him before. She gazes at him with sincere wonder, clearly moved by the depth of his connection to the invisible world. With a firm nod, he secures his gear and prepares for the task ahead. Nearby, a quill dances over parchment, capturing the weight of the moment as the documents are prepared. While she focuses on the guild's administrative duties, and for his sake he sets out into the silence of the moonlit fields, blade at the ready. He calls the name Flame Emperor, infuses his weapon with the essence of all spirits, and it bursts into fierce, otherworldly light. The shoe weapon is designed to imbue the weapon with flame and cut monsters, but when he tests it, instead of the roaring fire he saw, he feels only a faint warmth. He gets angry and resists himself but does not give up. Head decides to continue training. Meanwhile, others somewhere study scrolls, hoping to find the key to his success. From the depths of the cave, which was once sealed, a monstrous clawed limb crawls out into the nighttime. This means a terrible return. The team freezes, examining the trail on the ground. The ribbons indicate follow it, and despite the strange timing, she insists, going on air now is the best moment. She explains with a wink that the recording of their journey works as a deterrent. Potential thieves will be afraid to leave a permanent digital trail. Addressing her audience, she notes the surprisingly bright light in the cave and explains that the insect emitting the light makes their reconnaissance much easier. She warns her viewers to be on alert for anything unusual, and her companions prepare to assist in monitoring the broadcast, catching any signs of trouble. Tension rises as soon as they notice that the walls and ceiling are wet and stick disgustingly to the skin. A stern warning sounds, "Do not touch." Suddenly the surface begins to tremble and they realize with horror, the walls are not made of stone at all. Spectators shudder and turn away in disgust as soon as the true nature of the cave is revealed. It is covered with countless flickering eyes. Without hesitation, the travelers instantly draw their weapons and blind the creatures with light from insects to cut their way forward. He gave a sign to the girl with bald ears to cover her eyes, warning the viewers, "Do the same because a dazzling flash is about to strike." An incredibly bright and scorching light flared up for a moment. It snatched the darkness of the cave, depriving any threats lurking in the shadows of orientation. When the light went out, the group was thrown back by the grotesque sight. The cave walls were shedding skin. He praised the streamer for the accurate, though shocking, tactical use of insects that emit light. They quickly surveyed the area, noticing a streak of light stretching to the exit, and he barely stopped himself from falling into a treacherous abyss which triggered a sharp warning from his companion. The broadcast continued as they examined the distant mountain ridges. They felt a powerful magical presence and guessed that someone might be hiding among the peaks. He consulted with his ally and confirmed, neither the black stone nor any aliens were found at the current source point, so they were left to wonder if their prey had escaped. Pointing at the stream flowing down the cliff, he said that if they traced the river to its source, they might finally reach that mysterious black stone. With firm agreement, they set off following the water's path, but the ground suddenly gave way beneath their feet, revealing a hidden passage. He noticed tracks leading to the water and furrowed his brow, muttering that they needed to hurry if they wanted to make it in time. The streamer apologized for the interruption and announced the resumption of the broadcast while tracking the trail, noting a sudden, palpable tension in the air. They stopped by a deep ditch trying to figure out where it came from, while the fox girl watched anxiously from the side. Before them opened a cavern of colossal size, its vastness erased from view a small lonely pedestal in the center, on which a sacred blade seemed to be kept. He pointed toward the center, named the object the black stone, and ordered the group to retrieve it quickly, warning that eerie cracks were already appearing on its surface. A familiar voice broke the silence in the air, mocking his lateness, and he realized that it was none other than Gashu who had arrived. The newcomer urged them to step forward, surrounded by a swarm of dark, shadowy creatures, and brushed off their complaints as trivial matters of the past. Isurus holds a small, empty vial in his hand. His head is buzzing with thoughts until he recognizes it as a powerful protective agent, most likely from the same black mark. He recalls the scent that still lingered near the village leader's house yesterday, and this suddenly prompts the thought, he must ask the forest girl about the origin of that item. The adventure story is increasingly filled with anxiety, so perhaps it is better to leave this matter alone for now. The mystical presence has already moved forward, and the group remained behind to consider how to proceed. Time is running out. While the scent dissipates, they decide to follow the river as originally planned. The streamer shows a hand-drawn map. She says she analyzed months of broadcasts to sketch the local terrain. She points out specific landmarks and says, if they explore these key places, they will finally be able to uncover the truth they seek. She listens attentively as her companion explains the nuances of training, recalling the advice she received before sleep to refine her technique. He brushes off the difficulties and notes that his own body is just beginning to warm up for this work. He acknowledges the difficulty and reminds her that mastering new skills overnight is impossible. They agree to continue moving forward together. Their focus narrows into silence, and from the thickets suddenly jumps out a horned rabbit, confusing them. The creature lunges forward with unexpected fury, its size and magical aura clearly swollen, forcing the group to instantly react to the threat. A sharp metallic clatter, the beast strikes with powerful limbs, cutting everything around while the travelers frantically form a defense. When the dust settles, she cautiously looks around, confirming that the immediate threat has been neutralized. After that, she makes special paper to measure magical concentration. The darker the color, the higher the intensity of residual energy left in it. She excitedly explains that by using water, they managed to conduct double speech, and notes, the magical concentration in this area is rapidly increasing. He listens attentively while the conclusions of the Adventurer Association are voiced. He confirms, if you drink the water, magic quickly depletes. This lasts for several days. The group freezes in shock, staring at the creature before them, and gasps as soon as they realize, the black stone is here. He feels a growing threat. His face hardens as he understands. The number of monsters is clearly increasing, and soon they will be upon them. Startled by a sudden rumble nearby, he sharply urges the others hide somewhere until we are not discovered. Due to the impending danger, he orders the others to move forward, while he stays behind to deal with the monsters and ensure their path is clear. The entrance suddenly collapses in a cloud of dust and debris, and he freezes in stupor from the unexpected turn of events. He frantically checks the communication device in despair, trying to confirm that Gashu is safe after all three moved further. He stands his ground, stating that he will continue the pursuit, while his companion urges caution, advising the group to first reach the upper section.